take the roll. Councilmember Ferguson.
Here.
Councilmember Noblock.
Here.
Councilmember Ward is absent. Mayor Pro Tem Duncan
Here.
and Mayor James.
Here.
The first item on the agenda is the invocation to be given by Pastor Carl Steckenberg of St. Andrews by the Sea United Methodist Church.
Please rise.
Let's be in prayer. Loving God, we are grateful for the gift of this day. We're grateful for the beauty of San Clemente, for the chance to be part of this gathering that seeks to build and strengthen this community. We know these are challenging times within our world, and we see so much struggle. We see humanity at its best and at its worst, and we know that your love calls us forward to care for one another as fellow human beings. Tonight, as our leaders meet, I ask that you bless their work, grant wisdom, peace, and understanding as they wrestle with the sometimes difficult topics. And I pray for the safety of our first responders and those who serve and protect among us. And I ask that your presence would be made known tonight. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Dennis Camp, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Go ahead, go to the mic, please.
That's how you got it. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Camp. City Clerk.
Yes, could we have a motion to waive reading and pull of all resolutions and ordinances?
So move.
Councilmember Ferguson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noblock. Mayor Pro Tem Duncan.
Aye.
Mayor James.
Aye.
Carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Are there any items that need to be added to the agenda?
No.
Oral communications. Members of the audience wish to address council on matters that are within the jurisdiction of the city of San Clemente, but not separately listed on the agenda, may do so during the oral communications portion of the meeting. Speakers may address council once during oral communications, with each speaker being allotted 3 minutes and should give his or her presentation.
Oh, are we going to do Senator debates first?
Oh.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll do, so we're going to move Senator Bates' presentation. And then we'll do oral communications right after that. Thank you.
Okay.
We see you, Senator Bates. Good evening.
Good evening. I had a little technical difficulty, but I think I'm on now. And can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Great.
Hi, Pat.
Hi. Well, thank you guys. Good evening, Mayor James, Mayor Pro Tem Duncan, and council members. Thank you guys for all you do for the city of San Clemente. Being on a city council, you know, all politics are local. And local control is certainly the name of the game these days, because great things happen in our communities. Not sure at our state level, great things can happen, but we have a more difficult process, let's say, to getting to some of those answers. But I do appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about Senate Bill 1224, which is going to provide vital funding for restoration, conservation efforts that will protect, restore, and enhance habitat for our sensitive wildlife populations and watersheds in our area. In all my efforts to address South Orange County transportation needs, and that goes back to when I was on Orange County Transportation Authority as a member of the Orange County Board of Supervisors back in, that was 2007 through 2014. I served on OCTA, and we created an incredible environmental mitigation bank. And it was through this same process of setting aside conservation lands with high conservation values. And it was in great partnership with our conservation agencies, but also our developers, who were very much a part of the process. So it's been a great experience. I believe that Lori Donchak followed in my footsteps there and continued the great efforts that are underway, because we do have large areas of undeveloped habitat, particularly in our watersheds, large and small. And I wanted to find a way to get vital funding into the region to improve the ecological habitats, including those within the city limits of certainly of San Clemente. The habitats include aquatic, riparian stream, oak, woodland, grasslands, coastal sage scrub, and provide habitat for numerous and endangered threatened species. The Transportation Corridor Agency that I also served on during that same time did a great job with the 73 was, if you notice, that areas that run through Laguna Beach, all through there, it's an incredible conservation areas that they were part of. So everybody has been working in that direction for many years with a few little bumps and fissures along the way, but hopefully strengthening the ecological health of the watersheds that we currently have preserved will ensure that existing water quality and water drainage benefits to the coastline are protected and increased, so the conditions of the beaches in the area will be well maintained. My bill appropriates 37 million. Sounds like a lot, you guys, but right now I think we're having two different projections on what the surplus is. That runs from somewhere from 40 billion to 68 billion. So there's some good change there to help all of the priorities that we have throughout California and certainly through our local governments. The 37 million that my bill is seeking will go to the Wildlife Conservation Board for grants to acquire land or conservation easements or to perform restoration in watersheds in Southern Orange and Northern San Diego counties, with priority for projects in the San Mateo Creek watershed. That's 139 square mile San Mateo Creek watershed at your southern border is the last major undeveloped waterway with no dams or channels in Southern California. And it includes 11 endangered threatened species, including the southern steelhead trout, southwestern willow flycatcher, Pacific pocket mouse, least Bell's vireo, and San Diego fairy shrimp, all of which are federally listed under the Endangered Species Act. The grant program will be run by the Wildlife Conservation Board, and assuming 1224 becomes law, I certainly encourage the city of San Clemente and many in the South County area to consider a grant application. And I certainly appreciate the city's support of my bill. We also enjoy the support of a wide variety of environmental groups. And I have to share with you, some of my colleagues said a Republican bill in natural resources actually got on consent. And you know, that is a precedent setting in some ways, but that's because of the great work of all of our local government officials, in particular, all that you guys have done. So thank you for that. We can finally, each of us can have completely different reasons for wanting to protect and restore open space, but we all benefit from the results. So again, I'd like to thank you for inviting me. Thank you for your support. I will keep you posted on the progress of SB 1224 and want you to know, as those grants are applied for, we will be working with, and certainly this is what we do with OCTA, with the development community, so that we are achieving both. Certainly the ability to increase our housing stock, increase areas that bring us very strong economic benefit, but at the same time protecting those very precious resources that also bring us what I consider to be the most important other leg on the stool of our quality of life. So we'll all work together, and I will really appreciate seeing you guys if you come up here when we have a hearing on it, and you say your 2 cents and give it a high five, because that's something that's going on now that we are post-pandemic. Not really, but at least we were able to have many meetings with many people testifying in person. So that'll be a great opportunity to see all you in person here at the Capitol, and also an opportunity for you to see the process that we've gone through to bring this to fruition with all of your help. So thanks again, and any questions, I'm happy to respond.
Thank you, Senator Bates. City Council? Anyone? Are you going to, assuming this gets out of the Senate, do you have a sponsor in the Assembly to help you move this through the Assembly?
we haven't gotten there yet. It goes to appropriations and then we'll move in that direction. Absolutely.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, Senator Bates.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, guys.
And Mayor, we have a part 2 to that as it relates to the
Yes,
city
we do.
attorney. If we
Thank
could
you.
Allow him as well.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. This is a great opportunity to announce a settlement agreement that was approved by the City Council last week. The legislation that Senator Bates mentioned a minute ago was a principal part of our ability to do this. I teased her the other day that when we're making family plans for the holidays, my kids will say, well, when's Senator Bates going to call? Because she is tireless. And when there is time to think and settle in, she's given significant thought to how that legislation ties in to the settlement. The settlement that we need to announce tonight was reached between the City of San Clemente and the Save San Onofre Coalition. Those parties had disputed over the effects of the 2016 settlement between SSOC and the Transportation Corridor agencies. That settlement provided for an alternative alignment that appeared at the time to go through San Clemente. Each party has walked away from, this settlement provides for a redirection of the coalition's energies into working cooperatively with the city on this. The vote on that settlement agreement, which is a public record, went as follows. The motion to approve the settlement was made by Councilmember Noblock, seconded by Mayor James, and approved 4-1 with Councilmember Ferguson voting no and the other 4 voting yes. There's a couple of slides. Kate, would you mind teeing this up, and I'll walk quickly through the terms of the settlement because there's a lot more to it than getting away from a lawsuit. If you can go to the next slide, just to remind the council and the community that open space traditions in San Clemente, like those provided for in the settlement and in SB 1224, have a long history. The city's first general plan was authored by Ole Hansen. It included huge commitments to active and passive open space. And then, as you'll see in a minute, these traditions carried on. The Talega Forest Ranch Reserve, Pacific San Clemente, and Marble had specific plans, each set aside huge acreage of open space and conservation easements, not for a future freeway, but for preservation in perpetuity. The next slide references Measure V. The voters of San Clemente locked in on those open space values in 2008, when everything that was green, if you could go to the next slide, okay, everything that was green and designated open space in 2008 has to remain as open space in San Clemente unless the voters approve an amendment to Measure V, which is presumed to be an extreme unlikelihood. The next slide shows, the next 2 slides show 2 large habitat protection and restoration opportunities that with this settlement and SB 1224, the city will be able to maximize. The first is provided for in the 2016 agreement between the coalition and TCA. TCA committed in 2016 to funding $28 million of enhancements to the San Mateo Creek watershed. The only problem with that deal, and this is the aspect that the city challenged, the 28 million was only available if TCA extended SR 241. As of April 14th, at our urging and some good work done on both sides of that agreement, the 28 million that TCA will use to fund San Mateo Creek improvements is not connected anymore to the SR 241 extension. So TCA now has an unrestricted account to do that, which is right at the terminus of Pico. It's right in our neck of the woods. The next slide, please. Oops. I said that one. Next one. Thanks, Kate. The council is already hard at work on this element of open space preservation, and this will be at the heart of your application for a grant under SB 1224 if it passes. Just before COVID, the Marblehead Association approved dedication of 287 acres. It's the green area there in Pico Canyon to the city. That association had property that was restricted by Measure V and decided that it might as well be conserved in perpetuity in a conservation easement given to the city. So the city took title to that easement just a few months ago and will be able to, with help from the $37 million grant opportunity that Senator Bates is pushing, will be able to convert that into native habitat, restore it to native habitat, and then recoup its costs of doing that in a habitat and in a conservation bank. Next slide is another opportunity. This one is 165 acres. It's held by the successor to Lang Forester Ranch called 88 Pacific. And that company owns 165 acres. It's everything designated in any color in that slide. That's north of the city's holdings. If you look at that east-west corridor in that picture, that's Camino del Rio. And so you can see where that abuts this area that this private entity is seeking to set aside in a separate habitat bank. Next slide, please. SB 1224, as the senator said, appropriates $37 million to the California Wildlife Conservation Board for grants to acquire or restore habitats for sensitive wildlife populations in South Orange County. So the council's direction and the city's goal is to have shovel ready, so to speak, a grant application that will be able to take that property that's in Pico Canyon and up on both sides of Camino del Rio and set that aside with the approval of the resource agencies in perpetuity as a habitat bank. As time progresses, the disturbed habitat that's there now, the wild muster and other non-native species, will be able to be replaced with native species, which goes right to the core of that legislation. Last but not least, these are the elements of the settlement that tie in to this legislative platform. As I said, the Safe San Onofre Coalition and TCA have already decoupled the 2016 promise from TCA to fund $28 million from SR 241. So that now is a generic mitigation bank that TCA can use for any purpose, not necessarily SR 241 as they'd committed in 2016. The settlement has us dismiss the appeal regarding the former alignment that TCA had proposed. That alignment now is removed from all city and county general plan documents and removed from OCTA's master plan. And so this conforms the settlement to that, to those general plan amendments. The SSOC will waive fees on the city lawsuit. It sought to recover its fees. Now it won't need to. Instead, looking forward, we and they will enter into a consultation agreement where the coalition will work with the city to promote SB 1224 grants. They send a letter of support to the Senate the day after the council approved the settlement agreement. They'll work with the city on public education regarding San Mateo Creek, the state beach, and related coastal assets. They will consult and assist the city in passage of its coastal resiliency plan, which is pending before the Coastal Commission, and they'll consult with us regarding urban runoff, water quality, and biodiversity. They'll also provide input and expertise as the city seeks to advance its local coastal plan. So that in a nutshell is a summary of what we've been working on. I should recognize opposing counsel for the coalition was Bill White. He worked every day of his spring break on bringing this to fruition and trying to get it ready to go so it could dovetail with the efforts we're making in Sacramento. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions?
I do, Mayor Ward.
Please.
Mayor James, pardon me. Okay, for the city attorney, your presentation tonight, it's missing the amount the city was agreed in the vote to pay to be part of this settlement. You excluded the amount that the city paid upfront.
That's I can find that if you'd like.
That's really important to note. And I think it was over $600,000.
It's 600,000 payable, not in attorney's fees, but looking
Not
forward for
attorney.
the services rendered by the
Right, so that's
coalition.
really important to note, and that was all up front. And Eric, could you remind us what fund that came out of?
General liability reserve.
Thank you. And also, Scott, what was BBK paid for this endeavor?
BBK wasn't paid anything for
Okay.
this endeavor. My
Okay,
partners have advanced the city $1.8 million in this
Okay.
endeavor.
okay, and the BBK is seeking to recover those fees at this time in the appeal, I know.
Not yet, but the council's authorized us to do
The
that.
council is authorized, not me, but the council majority. And then also, I think it's important for the public to note, because I was concerned about this since, number one, the TCA board nearly 2 years ago entered into a resolution unanimous, including with San Clemente board members, to stop the toll road at Oso. And then number two, the majority city council entered into a cooperative agreement with the agencies, OCTA in the county as well, to ensure that. So I was a no vote for those particular reasons at this time, to not allocate the $600,000 for this activity at this time. But thank you. I just wanted to clarify that the money is always important to note, and the overlap in actions that have already been taken by bodies to protect our open space. Thanks.
Mayor
Thank you,
Pro
Mayor
Tem.
James.
Councilmember Nobla.
City Attorney, was the TCA given an opportunity to be part of this settlement?
Yeah, dating back to a year ago when your representatives from the council sat down with all affected stakeholders and started what was the cooperative agreement. Yes, they were invited to that. They weren't able to come to approval of the cooperative agreement. This was a follow-on to that effort that they were not involved in.
Okay, so they haven't agreed with the other two parties to this plan.
They agreed to the amendment to the 2016 settlement. Yes.
Okay. How does this settlement help prevent the TCA from ever putting a toll road through San Clemente?
Well, what it does is takes away the very strong incentive that the coalition had to see the freeway done. So the coalition and all its members had been very strong advocates of some extension of the SR 241, including the San Clemente alignment. So the $28 million would be triggered to fund their efforts in San Mateo Creek. Now, the incentive, the $28 million, is decoupled from SR 241. So all of that support and all of that incentive that the coalition and its members had to see the freeway done is gone. So that's a practical consideration, but it's been a very real consideration in trying to get to this point. As you'll remember, members of the coalition opposed the cooperative agreement because it made it less likely that SR 241 would be built. Now we think that incentive's gone. As this progresses, we're not quite there yet, but the acreage that I showed you, which is around 600 acres, will soon be locked up if the coalition and we are successful in mitigation banks. That will include the sign-offs by state and federal resource agencies. Once that happens and once they're approved as mitigation banks, TCA won't have the authority to override those federal considerations of the Fish and Wildlife Service, for example.
Right. Now, the TCA, didn't the TCA oppose Senator Bates' prior bill to prevent any toll road by making this area a conservancy that couldn't have freeways built through it?
Yeah, they provided very strenuous opposition.
And that was after they had approved not extending the 241?
Right after.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how about on this current legislation that Senator Bates, to her credit, has proposed? Were they going to support us now strongly and make sure that there's no toll road through San Clemente?
They've made no commitment about that.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. Okay, well, they're still at it, Mayor James.
They are
You haven't-
indeed. It should be noted that several weeks ago at TCA meeting, they had an opportunity to disavow any extension of the 241 or disavow putting any toll on the current Los Patronos Parkway extension Parkway. And there was a little bit of misinformation. They said we weren't part of the cooperative agreement. Well, that is true. They weren't part of the cooperative agreement. However, they were there every moment of the discussions, and they chose not to be part of the agreement. So any disinformation by the TCA regarding they weren't part of the agreement is just out and out a lie, and we need to call it out. And I would also like to say, Mr. City Attorney, I think you did a phenomenal job of getting us here. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Scott. Terrific job.
City Clerk.
We actually have two speaker cards on this item.
Yep.
The first is from Mike. I don't have a last name.
Yeah, sitting back as a citizen and listening to the discussion, I had my aha moment. It sounds like this is a way to stop the toll road. I think that's what's going on here. If so, I support this with some conditions. If not, then I'm concerned. Maybe people could discuss this a little more and let me know. In thinking about setting aside any wildlands in our area, as I often do, fire comes to mind. It's a great idea to set aside habitat. We in San Clemente are surrounded by wilderness, the ocean to the south, to the east. It is a wonderful interchange between the humans and nature. And I think we all value that. And it's one of the reasons we live here. But in California, there is a debate now amongst environmentalists, I consider myself one, about fuel load mitigation and the role of fire in our ecology, the important role of fire, something that Native peoples used for over 10,000 years here in California, something that maybe was overlooked by environmental movements in the 70s and 80s when kind of a keep away, don't touch it mentality came in. So I'm a little bit concerned that the details of how our wildlands in this area, additional wildlands, would be managed. In some areas where there was not fuel load mitigation, there was not controlled burns, there were not fire breaks in place, what used to be 600-degree rolling grassland fires turned into 2,000-degree firestorms and destroyed all the habitat, including the tiger salamanders and all kinds of things in Northern California, ending up killing the very things they were trying to protect. So this new debate in California about the proper way to go forward, I would hope would be included in any discussion of how these lands would be managed. And I would hope that in an era potentially of climate change, of hotter areas, of more destruction from fire, that we would be fire safe and fire smart about this. Two more things I want to bring up, my 45 seconds. One, all too often, wild areas end up homeless encampments in our area and cannot be enjoyed, scare away the wildlife, the deer, the mountain lions, the bobcats that occasionally walk into our canyons here. And therefore, there's nobody to chase away the coyotes, which then eat our cats. So a smarter use of the lands would include some fuel load mitigation, understanding the interface between the wildlands and our homes, the all too often use of this by folks who should not be camping out there, and various other impacts as well, including criminal behavior, including a dystopic interface between wild animals. Thank you.
Sir.
Next, the next speaker is Amanda.
Hello. It was difficult in listening to the April 14th TCA meeting because there was a lot of information to process, basically that the public was not aware. However, the TCA attorney, Mr. Rubin, gave us a hint about this litigation. He stated that it has to deal with their litigation strategy in the ongoing litigation that I wouldn't feel comfortable talking about it publicly. And, but the concern here is that it was Director Bartlett who raised some serious concerns whereby it would potentially open up the settlement agreement with the environmental groups, since she wanted to amend outdated information and make corrections regarding wrong information regarding tolling. However, the OCTA actually said in a letter, actually asking the same thing that Supervisor Bartlett said. So, this raised a question from Chair Peggy Huang, and she asked the TCA attorney. She said, if we were to take Director Bartlett's suggestions, would that require us to reopen the negotiation with all the parties or signatories to the settlement? Mr. Rubin stated, yeah, it would actually. The reason why we're able only to rely on signatories from the environmental groups and us is because Section 3 has no obligations with any other parties. Under the terms of the agreement, if we touch any other section in which they have obligations or rights, then we need all of the other parties to sign on. So that's why we're able to proceed with just the environmental groups and us. The other thing, again, that my concern with going into the other sections is because of the ongoing litigation. Again, if you start touching those, you potentially raise issues that don't exist in the current litigation, where we prevailed both against the reserve and the city. So I would be hesitant to do that. As far as inconsistencies, we're not ratifying the agreement by way of the amendments. We're amending the agreement to just focus on the conservation portion, providing more flexibility. Just with that, to reinforce what the CEO said, we're not actually handing the funds to the environmental groups. What happens is there is a pot, and the environmental groups and the TCA board need to agree on what happens with the money. So this gives us flexibility to look at the San Juan Creek watershed and potentially beyond. If there's nothing feasible there, as well, create a mitigation bank and recoup as much as the $28 million as possible if we don't end up using it as part of our mitigation for our projects. So it's not a ratification of this. So there are concerns regarding what Supervisor Bartlett wanted to do. She wanted to open up the litigation, the settlement agreement. And there does pose some problems with that. And the OCTA wanted to do the exact same thing. And there's concerns regarding that. Thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney, do you want to comment on any of what Ms. Quintanilla just spoke of?
I think it's fine. It just relates to TCA and what they thought in their minds could and couldn't be accomplished in terms of that amendment.
I would just, it wasn't Ms. Quintanilla's words, it was her quoting Mr. Rubin, but they do, those environmental groups do get some of that money. They get, I think, about 8.5%.
They could get
overhead fee.
depending on-
So 8.5% of $28 million certainly becomes a lot of money.
Okay. So moving on to oral communications. First speaker is Craig Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm Craig Alexander. I represent Ms. Ferguson in the PRA lawsuit against the city. At the last City Council meeting, I was watching that online, and that was for a request for increase of litigation expenses for BB&K, and there were some statements made that were, in my opinion, not accurate. You were told that the case is heading for trial, that the case has depositions scheduled, that I'm not cooperating with. I've requested to do extra time for the city to respond to things. And finally, that the entire dispute is about documents that are subject to the attorney-client privilege. Here's the facts. The petitions for writ of mandate do not go by jury trials. They go by the lawyers filing papers and evidence and about a 1-hour hearing with the court, maybe in second hearing, depending upon how that goes. There have been no depositions scheduled in this case, and there's none contemplated. Each and every time Avi Reichman, who is the attorney for BB&K I deal with, has asked me for more time, I've given it to him. There's a dispute regarding reclassifying documents as attorney-client privilege. I can't explain that in 3 minutes. So my suggestion to you, if you want to know more about that, you go to get a copy from your attorney of a letter of Mr. Reichman to me of February 1st, 2022, and all the attachments to that. my response to him of February 3rd, 2022, and importantly, the privilege log that was delivered to me by B&K on December 30th, 2021, that listed some documents as deliberative process exemption. It's up to you whether you want to believe me or not, or check this out. That's your prerogative, but you were asked to and did vote to increase this budget by over twice what you'd already spent. I wanted to say one last thing. When after the meeting of April 19th, Mr. Reichman called me to ask me for a pause while you all have a third-party review, my answer was yes. Thank you. God bless you. I hope you have a good night.
Thank you. City Attorney, can we get the letter that Mr. Alexander just referenced between Mr. Reitman and Mr. Alexander?
Sure, I can find that and get it in here.
Thank you. And each council member get it, please. Thank you.
No, I got it.
We have it. Thank you.
Mr. Duncan went on a tirade of personal attacks and lies, intentionally distorting the issues regarding doxing and didn't allow us to respond. Shame on Mr. Duncan, who appears to be a coward. Mr. Duncan called the discussion a made-up non-issue designed to embarrass people. Then he attempted to embarrass me and others by attacking us, the definition of hypocrisy. Chris appears unaware that the government code requires redacting personal information. As a lawyer, I can't understand that. I never requested that anything be removed from the city website. I have no problem with posting those on the website. I have a problem with personal information. The issue is privacy. His statements are untrue. I asked Chris now to post his family addresses, cell phones, emails, children's names, etc., on the city website, exactly what happened to us. If our request to remove personal information is non-issue, then post your personal information, let everybody know about it. Otherwise, apologize to my friends for what you said last meeting. To paraphrase Shakespeare from Hamlet, Chris doth protest too much, methinks. Mr. Duncan's personal attack, oddly directed after criticizing personal attacks along with his ranting, lack of composure, and blaming the victims, was a true embarrassment and an example of why he should not be elected to higher office. Now I want to move on to I love the smirk. Now I want to move on to the agenda item. I'm not going to discuss over city manager expenditure. I'm not going to discuss the merits of it. I'm going to discuss the fact that it merely quotes a law. There is no agenda report. There's no discussion. There's no pros or cons. And on things we do agree on, Chris and I have talked about this, that we need substantive reports, not just a statement of facts. I don't understand how that's even possible. If that had been a high school project, they would have flunked. And I don't really care who wrote it. The agenda reports have to inform the council, pros, cons, what to do. This says serve and file, and there's no discussion. The issue was raised at a previous council meeting that was held up at the golf course, and it was whether money could be spent. There's no discussion of that issue in the agenda report, the issue that why it was raised. How's that possible? I also want to raise the issue that the item was signed by a city attorney, CJ. And from what I can tell, CJ is a lawyer admitted in December of 2021. The city pays Scott Smith, an experienced 30-year plus trial lawyer, to do the work, and he's a blended rate so that the city pays the same for any lawyer from the BBK office. I don't think I'm wrong on that. You correct me if I am. CJ's being trained. That's not who this city council should have reviewing substantive items going to this council. That's what Scott's supposed to do. Unless he was on vacation, he's been here every meeting that I've seen for the last few. Why is a first-year brand new lawyer reviewing important documents and not pointing out to the city before when he signs off? There's nothing in this memo. The city agenda report has nothing in it. This is not how you prepare agenda reports. So listen, I think it's important for the city council to take back governance of the city and not allow staff and the city attorney to do what they're doing, which is provide no information and then control what's going on. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. City Clerk.
Yes, Adina, VERD. I can't read the rest of it. I'm afraid.
Thanks for having me tonight. My name is Adina Verdult, and I'm actually speaking on behalf of my younger brother, Troy Verdult. He's 37 years old, and he just passed away last Wednesday. We are both San Clemente residents. Troy has shared this memo with me before his passing and wanted to be heard today at this meeting on a cause he felt strongly about: the unsheltered mental illness and drugs in our town. In his words, he says, "Hello, my name is Troy. I was homeless and lived in a park in Riverside County where I was content being an IV drug addict. I was ending up in prison or jail trying to feed my addiction many times. While incarcerated, I was rehabilitated and participated in programs with CAL FIRE as a non-violent offender. Orders by the governor had me and 3,500 other inmates released during the COVID outbreak. After being released from a COVID-filled jail, I struggled with PTSD on top of my bipolar disorder and addictive personality. With the help of my family, I was offered a job with programs that even helped a habitual criminal as myself guide me back into society gently. With over 20 felony convictions, I was still determined to find work and surprisingly was hired by UPS as a seasonal employee. Today, I work at Landers Restaurant from the day it opened at North Beach in San Clemente and have come to take great pride in it. I've been able to open a bank account, finance a car, replace nearly all my teeth, get Medi-Cal assistance. Thanks to Medi-Cal programs in place in Imperial County and Riverside, I was even able to start a family, and I became OSHA certified with food handler certificate, received an HVAC certificate, forestry license, received my GED again, and even passed the bar. Determined and fighting all odds, I beat the statistics and was able to survive what no other person without help should have to endure. If I had to survive this ordeal, then anyone that has the means to better their life, especially with help from nonprofits and outreach programs that could be made available in our city, should have that ability. The location of Landers Restaurant, North Beach, I have learned as a controversial and very sad developing homeless encampment spot. Fights, overdoses, after-hour fires and dumpsters, defecation buckets in between our building and 7-Eleven. We've had to call 911 nearly every day. I recently revived a man from an overdose that rattled me to the core. Restaurant patrons keep reporting having beer bottles thrown at their cars in the city parking lot. We've had theft of propane tanks and one transient woman attempting to take a case of bananas off a vendor's truck because she was starving. In the morning when I leave and open the restaurant, I have to wake up unsheltered individuals with no place to go on the patio and under the front overhang, especially when they need shelter from inclement weather. It is really sad, and I wake them up kindly because I've been in their shoes. Working at the restaurant full time, I see how San Clemente's.
Thank you very much. And our condolences. Thank you for being here this
Yes,
evening.
of course. Thank you.
Amanda Kitnia.
Firstly, I want to thank the Office of the District Attorney Special Prosecution Unit and Senator Pat Bates for her help. Public service is a public trust requiring officials and employees to place loyalty to the citizens, the laws and ethical principles above private gain, following ethical guidelines and eliminating any improprieties or even the appearance of potential corruption is imperative to safeguarding the public's trust in government. To help accomplish this goal, laws exist to aid public officials in avoiding conflicts between an official's public duties and the official's personal interest. Public trust requires citizens to place loyalty and faith into the laws and ethical principles of public officials. When representatives violate that trust to satiate a personal conflict, it erodes the public's trust in government. This could be a city council member claiming to search for metadata to identify the person who made an anonymous FPC complaint, or sharing that FPC complaint against a city council member to target that person for public scrutiny, which is a First Amendment violation, since people have the right to petition government without fear of reprisal. The explicit goal of elected officials is to safeguard ethical guidelines. Recently, the publishing and the distribution of public comments with personal identifying information was finally addressed. Many emails were sent starting on January the 10th, either to the entire dais or the individual council members. The doxing of personal information goes against Government Code 6250, 6255A, PC 653.2, and our California Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, where they all protect privacy rights. This was not a made-up issue or a non-issue, which Mayor Pro Tem Duncan stated. These residents simply did not give their consent to have their personal information be published when they submitted their public comments, and there certainly was no parental consent for minors. Just recently, as of today, I received a PRA request back, And I had sent an email to the district attorney on April the 5th, and consequently, a senior deputy district attorney, as well as another deputy district attorney was copied in that email to the city attorney and the city manager, stating that our office was under the impression that redactions were made for all of the individuals listed below, and it listed all 22 people. Can you please confirm? So the city manager responded that basically in highlighting only those that the author requested. However, the senior deputy district attorney emailed again, now with 2 other deputy district attorneys copied in that same email, stating, will you please redact the personal identifying information for all of the other individuals on the list below as well? It is our office understanding that all of these individuals want their information redacted. Please confirm when the redactions are completed. You know, when I brought this up to the attention of the city council members, you know, I did my due diligence, and I expect that of all the city council members. I appreciate your time, and I'm really grateful that Senator Bates and District Attorney Switzer helped with that matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Larry Culbertson.
I do have a picture to show, Laura. You go ahead. Thank you. My name is Larry Culbertson. I'm here representing the San Clemente Historical Society. I'm here to talk about 402 Pasadena Court. Several local residents approached the Historical Society with concerns about trees being planted on the property. I checked with the neighbors and with city officials, and what I found out was that in addition to planting a solid row of trees immediately inside the property line, the historic landscape has been removed and a major alteration of the exterior wall has occurred. None of this was done with the benefit of a permit. This property is commonly known as Vista de las Olas, or Seacliff Villas. And that's the Bartow house in the background. The one in the foreground is the property in question. Go to the next one, please, Laura. It was built in 1927 for Bertha and Emma Weirk, 2 sisters who were very prominent in early San Clemente history. Virgil Westbrook was the architect. Westbrook was one of Ole Hansen's favorite architects. He designed over 30 of the most important of the 203 historic buildings that are still extant, including the Beach Club, the Historic City Hall, and the Art Supply Building. The most wonderful thing about this particular property, the most interesting feature, is that cascading water feature. It goes down the slope, comes out of the side of the living room and goes down into a fountain down below. It's one of the prettiest features in San Clemente. We're concerned that this fountain may be demolished. Code compliance has been made aware of our concern. We came close to losing this property and the Beachcomber back in 2005. Both were approved for demolition by the city council. But fortunately, the Coastal Commission nixed that project. So there have been several other recent instances of new owners of historic properties deciding that they would do work on their property without checking with the city planning department. It's time for the city to be proactive instead of reactive. Instead of waiting for new owners to accidentally alter their historic property, there should be a gentle preemptive reminder, maybe in the form of a covenant that's signed at the time that the property is purchased. Over 80 of our 203 historic properties already have that. They've signed the historic property preservation agreements, and they're bound to the property. So please consider some method of reminding owners of historic properties that the rules they must follow are a little different than those for the non-historic properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Ruth.
Pickleball was a little bit louder than normal in my neighborhood. I went to investigate it. It turns out that the city has proposed and has organized pickleball lessons in San Gregorio Park through August 31st. Back in December, we discussed this and everyone but Ms. Ward agreed that the noise emitting from the operation of 8 pickleball courts at San Clemente Park negatively impacts the residents. It was agreed that the city would decommission them as soon as they built them at Steed Park, which would not affect any residences. Councilmember Ferguson made a motion that pickleball be discontinued in San Clemente Park immediately so that all residents are treated equally as required by Civil Code 3480. Councilmember Ferguson received no support from the rest of you. It's disturbing that the city attorney, Mr. Smith, did not advise the city or the council that he had firsthand knowledge of the issue that fencing is ineffective and that the noise of pickleball is an issue pursuant to Civil Code 3480 because he is the attorney hired by the city of Newport Beach involved in lawsuits fought by its residences. So the city, rather than doing anything to help us through this period, starts adding things like pickleball lessons at the court through August 31st. I don't understand. There must be some disconnect. But I would want to remind you that months ago, you were given Dr. William Thornton of Thornton Acoustic and Vibrations findings from 2017 that states that pickleball and noise creates a human health risk and is linked between certain noises, including pickleball, and the risk of hypertension, heart disease, etc., is well established. He explained that pickleball noise exceeds U.S. and international standards and guidelines, includes such organizations as the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the World Health Organizations. It also confirms that pickleball noise significantly increases noise levels and the relationship between community noise increase and human impact and annoyance, and is well established in a scientific body of knowledge. Finally, it concludes that the reducing the noise of pickleball fencing is not effective for reasons of fundamental physics. I do appreciate the city spent the money attempting to resolve it with the fence, but this is after the fence. If I can get it to play again. If y'all can hear that. But that's pickleball after the fence. We cannot live with this for another 2 years. Nothing has been started at Steed Park. Nothing, because it doesn't even go to the CIP process till the
Thank you very
summer.
much.
Thank you.
Mayor James, if I may ask a question of the city manager.
Certainly.
Thanks. City manager, are there pickleball classes you've added to San G?
Yes,
Why? Why would you do that?
because
We have people.
they're extremely popular. We only do classes for 12 people at a time. And the council direction was clear that we issue no SEPs to San Gorgonio Park. And so we have a demand, just like we have other demands for contract classes throughout the city, where it's Vista Hermosa for swim lessons, tennis court lessons at Bonita Canyon, etc.
But this council has heard from numerous residents for over 6-8 months regarding the quality of life and safety issues here. And it would be imperative that you come to council and state or get support from us if you're going to add more to this, to create even louder noise and more traffic. So I'm just stunned. I'm just stunned. I'd like to agendize for the next meeting to have council discuss the continuation of pickleball for the next several months through summer. I have support for that.
I'll second
Classes.
that motion to agendize that. I was surprised here. I didn't know there were additional pickleball lessons being given on site, which really concerns me. So I think maybe it is an issue that needs to be addressed and discussed in more detail.
And if I may clarify, this was not new. Since we've had the pickleball courts at San G, we have always offered pickleball classes at San G through our recreation program. So this wasn't an add-on after the fact. It's something that's been going on since that pickleball court has, or those courts have been there for over 2 years.
Can you show us demonstrate some scheduling of
I
that?
suspect when we come back to discuss it at the next council meeting, we can.
Please, thank you. Thank you,
So-
Mayor James.
No, not a problem. So are you come back with a report, or do you need?
I just have 2, so it would be just a verbal presentation at this point.
I will give the third vote on that in order to bring back a report on that. Perfect. Thank you.
Don't have a dream.
The topic I'd like to speak to tonight is emergency services and hospital for San Clemente. Will there be a report from the hospital subcommittee tonight on hospital care and emergency services in San Clemente? What are the next steps? The hospital subcommittee, led by Mayor James and Mayor Pro Tem Duncan, facilitated by a consultant for public engagement and participation, produced a video, conducted a Zoom, and organized a public gathering for roundtable discussion in April. The object was to discuss the timeline of the closing of our hospital and the hard work the subcommittee, led by James and Duncan, has accomplished since 2016. We do not need to continue looking back. Let's have a vision, create a work plan, mobilize resources, and meet the needs of San Clemente for emergency services and accessible hospital care. The survey completed in 2021 is a watershed, a turning point. The people have spoken. Our residents overwhelmingly support a hospital. Cost must be defined for them to intelligently decide further. We are looking to this city council and city management for a plan to bring emergency services with hospital care to San Clemente. This public survey must frame our future. Bring in professional resources to advise on how to create a hospital district inclusive of San Juan Capistrano and Dana Point. Since the original RFP, the situation has changed greatly. Authorize the city manager to do an RFP seeking an investor in a community hospital with emergency services in San Clemente. The 2020 RFP was done during a pandemic, before the 2021 survey, and before the settlement was reached with Memorial Care. The property is no longer in litigation. The property is zoned for emergency services and hospital care. Since the original RFP, the situation is greatly changed. We need a new strategy and a new RFP. The survey of 2021 reported overwhelming community awareness of need for and support of an emergency room and hospital services in San Clemente. A majority of San Clemente indicated taxpayer support for hospital care with an emergency room. Let's determine next steps and present to San Clemente your plan going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. City Clerk, how many more do we have?
That's all.
That's it. Okay, so we're approaching the 6 o'clock hour. So I think we have a motion to recess in the closed session.
Should we,
There
should we
any
see if
items on
anyone
the
has,
cons-
is
are there
pulling
any items
anything?
on the consent calendar? that-
We'll come back to the consent calendar at seven.
Well, if no one's pulling it, we
Yeah,
could approve
no
the
one's-
consent.
Okay,
calendar.
yeah, okay. Has anyone pulled anything on the consent calendar?
No.
Oh, okay, excellent. So can I have a motion on the consent calendar?
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Councilmember Ferguson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noblock,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Duncan,
Aye.
and Mayor James.
Aye,
Carries 4-0.
thank you for pointing that out.
Um,
And then we
Move,
need
we
a-
make a motion, we go into closed
Please.
session.
We have reports, but you want to save the reports
Yeah,
for
we'll
after?
see the
Okay,
report.
okay, I'll second that.
Councilmember Ferguson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noblock,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Duncan,
Aye.
Mayor James.
All right, we'll see everyone at 7 o'clock. Thank you.
You translate for younger generation?
No, I won't. Oh. Welcome to the regular city council meeting of May 3rd, 2022. City clerk, please.
Yes, closed session report.
Mayor and council, there was no reportable action taken.
Okay, and the speaker is not here. First item under special presentation is computerized maintenance management program presentation.
Mr. Koger, you're on.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Kyle Koger, Public Works Director. I'm going to give a brief overview of our computerized maintenance management system, and I'm going to turn it over to some other staff to go into a little bit more detail about the program by Lucity. Next slide, please. What is CMMS? CMMS allows us to track repairs, schedule preventive maintenance, manage work orders, track asset inventory and maintenance history, and perform some reporting. Next slide, please. This chart shows some of our asset inventories broken down into the utilities and public works department. Our utilities department has roughly 74,000 assets to include pipes, hydrants, meters, valves, reservoirs, pump station, manholes, lift stations, and catch basins. Our public works department has roughly 63,000 assets to include buildings, bridges, streets, sidewalks, signs, lights, signals, parks, playgrounds, medians, trees, trails, and train sirens. Next slide, please.
Keep those train sirens up.
Some of the benefits of CMMS. It helps us extend the useful life of aging infrastructure. It hopefully gives us a proactive approach instead of a reactive approach to maintenance. It helps us to detect problems before failures. We can monitor costs, performance as well, and also manage assets. Next slide. Lucity works with several other programs. One of the key programs it works with is our GIS, so the user can get a visual of the infrastructure that they're working on. Lucity also works with our Eden program for timesheet reporting and our WinCan CCTV for sewer inspections. Next slide. Work orders. Our utilities department completes roughly 9,500 work orders per year. And then we break these down into preventive maintenance, corrective maintenance, and customer service work orders. And our public works department completes roughly 5,500 work orders a year. And these are broken down into preventative, corrective, and customer service work orders. These include work orders that are, it's not routine maintenance. So, mowing the parks or picking up trash, that's not what I'm calling a work order. These are filling potholes, trimming trees, doing some other types of things. Next slide, please. The city has been recognized and published in a couple of national publications, and city staff has also been a reference for other cities such as Irvine, Temecula, and Pasadena, who have bought and are now using similar software. Next slide. Going forward, some of the things that we'd like to accomplish are to download manuals linked into Lucity, to barcode some of the city's more valuable or most valuable assets, to integrate our SCADA system, to provide predictive maintenance approach on critical assets, and establish a strategic asset management plan. We've been actively using this program it's been fully implemented since about 2018. So we're about 4 years in, and there's still a lot more to do. And with that, I'll turn it over to our CMMS coordinator, Elmer Catapang, who will go a little bit deeper into the program.
You're on, sir.
Good evening, Mayor James, members of the City Council, Elmer Catapang, CMMS coordinator. Tonight, we will give you a brief presentation showing how Lucity is being implemented in both utilities and public works. We will start with an overview of our user interface. In here, managers, supervisors, and staff can manage their work in one central location. What What you're seeing on the left side are different tabs representing different work groups within departments. And on the right side are different frames containing all the relevant information that we have on our CMMS. We will start with the request frame. In here, staff can create internal requests and at the same time manage the progress of the request being created. If needed, they can also access the work orders that are being created out of that request. Second is the work order frame. Here, the end user can access the work orders created and find out who the work order is assigned to. For example, a supervisor can see a work order assigned to his staff. Specifically, I can click on these open work orders assigned to and look for that specific staff. At the same time, supervisors also can change the priority of each work order. This enables the user to have a proactive approach to maintenance management while also saving time and improving overall efficiency of the system. Next, you can also create and access all the inspections that are created in the CMMS. What you're seeing in here is the inspections that are being done on our train siren. In here, you can see the general location of the siren, the inspection date, who inspected it, the actual decibel reading of the siren, and other important information of the inspection. Third that I want to discuss is the importance that we need to realize that one important aspect of our CMMS is its ability to be integrated with several applications. UCT is seamlessly integrated with our GIS. I can simply click on a specific work order, highlight it, and show it on the map. What you're seeing in here is a fire hydrant work order. If I want to see where exactly that location of the fire hydrant, I can simply activate our map interface, which are already built in into the system. So that's the location of the fire hydrant that we just prepared. CMMS is also integrated with the Eden timesheet. That means all of the time and hours that our staff log in into their work orders are automatically being reflected on their time. Last but not the least is the CMMS integration with our CCTV cameras. Typically, when inspecting the city's sewer and storm drain pipe, as the city's camera band and its crew inspect the pipeline and stops live observation, all of those data are automatically being imported into CMMS. So the data that are imported are being reviewed in the office by the engineers. You see, this workflow has saved the city hundreds of hours. Instead of one person spending like weeks reviewing videos and identifying what to work on, they are automatically being filtered. They are automatically being filtered in this team. By connecting the field crew and engineering, this workflow allows both to track the project. Our field inspectors and our engineering both have the ability and the confidence to track all the rehab projects. The system also ensures that we are proactive on inspections and scheduled projects to minimize corrective work. By addressing minor problems now, we are avoiding community and financial crises that might occur in the future. To understand CMMS from a more detailed perspective, I will pass the floor on to Steve from Public Works Maintenance.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. My name is Steve Fritsch, Maintenance Inspection Coordinator and Staff Arborist for the Public Works Maintenance Department. Over the next few minutes, I'd like to show you a couple different work orders so you can see the process that the work orders, the process and the work orders that the maintenance staff use on a daily basis while performing our various maintenance tasks. Each staff member has their own customizable dashboard, which allows us to view all the work orders that have been assigned to us by our supervisors or managers. The first one I'd like to show is a corrective maintenance work order. A corrective maintenance task is performed to either repair, replace, or repair or replace equipment that becomes damaged, breaks, or happens to be vandalized. In this particular case that we'll take a closer look at, all 3 lights on the exterior of the pier restroom were ripped off the wall. One was completely missing and the others were hanging from the wires. There was also damage to the mounting brackets and the siding. So as we open up the work order and take a closer look at the specific work order, you can see that there are several fields where various information can be entered or selected from a drop-down menu. All the fields with the colored backgrounds are fields that are required. Staff has to fill those fields out in order for the work order to become complete. The other fields are for adding additional information as needed. We can see in this case, the supervisor for this work order is Brian Fields. And Brian assigned this task to Scott Pierce, our Senior Facilities Maintenance Specialist. You can see also as you scroll down to the bottom that as staff enters in their time and equipment costs, all those costs are tracked within Lucidity. If you look back up towards the top of the screen, between the area where all the form fields are and all the open tabs, you'll see a row of icons. And you'll notice one of those icons looks like a paper with a little paper clip attached to it. When that icon is highlighted orange, that indicates that there's additional attachments to the work order. Staff has the ability to upload supplemental information to the work order, such as inspection reports or other documentation or photos. So in this case, some photos were attached to the work order to give a little bit of higher level detail as to what task was performed. This first photo you can see is the damage. So you see the one light on the far end is completely missing, and then the other 2 are just hanging from the wires. And then the next picture will show the completed repair. So this extra ability to upload documents and photos really helps supervisors and managers gain a better perspective as to what specific work was performed. The next work order I'd like to show is a preventive maintenance task. Preventive maintenance is the regular or routine maintenance or inspection of equipment or assets in order to help ensure they're running properly, which helps eliminate or prevent equipment failure and downtime. Our preventive maintenance work orders are automatically generated according to the parameters that are set up within the template. And Elmer helps us set up all those PM templates for us. This specific PM work order is for the monthly inspection of the decibel readings for the pedestrian audible warning system down at the base of the pier, as well as at each one of the at-grade railroad crossings along the beach trail. This work order was assigned to Gene Lawson, who's one of our maintenance electricians. I'd like to highlight in this work order that we do have the ability to add multiple assets to one single work order. So in this case, all 19 of the siren pedestals were attached to this one single work order. And then in addition to this monthly PM work order, all 19 of these assets also have separate quarterly and annual preventive maintenance work orders and tasks that are attached to it as well. For additional information on how the utilities department is using Lucidity, I'd like to turn it over to Tyler.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening, Mayor James, council members. My name is Tyler Langell, Utilities Mechanic 2. Being a mechanic, we utilize Lucidity to track our work orders, PMs, and time cards. For example, Los Salinas Sewer Lift Station has weekly, monthly, biannual, and annual PMs. For each PM, we have a checklist. You can see here for the weekly, for our checklist for this station has 33 tasks, which consist of checking pumps, motors, and electrical components for that station. On our monthly checklist, we have fewer items, but still important, like valve exercises, exhaust fans, and fire extinguisher checks. Another example, and also to show our interdepartment teamwork, is the aeration tank PM at the reclamation plant, where the operators would complete their tasks and then turn that work order over to the mechanics. And then we would complete our tasks to then get the tank back online. These are just some of the examples on how Lucity helps us properly maintain these critical assets within the city. As mechanics, we help maintain the reclamation plant, water stations, sewer lift stations throughout the city. This concludes our presentation. We're happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ferguson, do you have any questions?
No, just this comment that it's very impressive to see how the departments utilizing such an efficient system, be interconnected.
Councilmember.
Yes, I have a question regarding the preventive maintenance. I appreciate hearing you do annual reviews, but I wonder, do you have a forward-looking capability in that program so that items as far as 5 years, like our quiet zone permit, which we unfortunately blew last year because we weren't on top of it, maintenance for bridges, things of that kind, are we able to track that far out?
We are. We have ways of putting in the system to say in 3 years, you need to start working on a permit. The bridges weren't in the program. Now I think we have them all. It's about 30, but we're going to track Caltrans structures and our own structures. And it's a living document, so it's always going to be added to.
Excellent. Thank you.
And of course, losing the waiver on the was it?
Audible warning system.
Yeah. What does the P stand for?
Pedestrian.
Oh,
Pedestrian. Thank you. The pedestrian already had to do with a glitch internally that we didn't get the waiver in on time. Nothing to do with Mr. Koger. That was his predecessor. I just wanna
Hopefully we
make
have that
clear.
solved.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, this is great to see leveraging technology this way. A couple sort of minor questions. Who determines that priority, right? I think we saw that you can change priority, move things up. Is that something a supervisor has the authority to do, or?
Yeah, I believe the way we do it is if it's a regular scheduled inspection, that might be a lower priority. Whereas if there's a street light that's down in the middle of the street, that's gonna be a high priority. We need to take care of that. It doesn't mean that inspection is important, but maybe it can wait a day or two while we do other higher priority things.
Is that automatically done based on the characterization of a specific work order that the system does, or is that manually done?
I'm gonna ask staff if they can.
Normally it's manually done by the supervisor.
Okay.
We have the ability to adjust the priority.
Okay. And then the supervisor also picks which employee is going to actually do the work.
That is correct.
Right.
The supervisor delegates the work to this line.
And then how about what if maybe it's something we can't do? We have to get a contractor. Who makes that determination?
Staff will, or a manager will make that decision on whether we have the equipment and the materials to do it or not.
Or the expertise, I guess, too.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what Councilmember Noblock said in regards to the bridge. I'm going to be a bit redundant here, but I don't think on that particular case we can be redundant. It was extraordinarily disappointing that we spent whatever it was, $4 million on a bridge that we never maintained. And I just hope this type of program will keep that from ever happening again. It's a bridge we're going to have to replace, and it should have had a life. Kyle, what should the life of that have been?
I mean, bridges can last 50, 75 years if they're maintained properly. If I could just add on to that, though, I do think it probably someone need to put their eyes on it sooner to know something need to be done. I do think there's a construction defect with that specific bridge. And that, I think, weighed in a big part of why it failed so soon or is in the shape it is now.
So the last thing, I want to say, whether it's public works or whether it's utilities, I think as citizens, maybe even as council members, we take you guys for granted. Not so much council members because we see what you do on a daily basis. But when we turn on the tap and the water flows, everyone's happy. We turn on the tap and there's no water, suddenly Dave is the sorriest guy in town, right? And same with street maintenance. I will ask you, I'll ask you one question about maintenance. Is tree maintenance, is this in Lucid as well? So,
Yes, sir. We have every street tree in the city inventoried and it's in Lucid.
wow. Okay. Again, to both Public Works and to the Utilities Department, you guys do a great job. And I thank you. We all thank you up here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
I want to just give a shout out to Tyler and Steve. I know you worked today and you came in, so totally appreciate it. And Elmer, way to go as the CMS coordinator. Well done.
Did you want to hear the closed session comment at this point?
Yeah, so let's go with the closed session comment real quick. You're good? Okay.
Okay. Then the next item is a presentation of a drowning prevention awareness proclamation to Chief Capo Bianco of the Orange County Fire Authority.
Are we supposed to have a proclamation here?
That's the next
Yeah,
item.
I got it right there. Sorry. Scared you, didn't I? Okay, so if council can come with me. In fact, we have 3 to do in a row here. Let's take all 3. And by the way, I think I have this right. Captain Bianco, Chief Capo Bianco, thank you, started his career as a lifeguard, did you not? I did. 2 years ago. So here's the proclamation. City of San Clemente, whereas drowning is the leading cause of death and disability in California for children under the ages of 5. And whereas for every child who dies from drowning, another 8 receive emergency care for non-fatal submersion injuries. And whereas fatal and no fatal drowning is a silent event occurring in as little as 2 inches of water, including inflatable swimming pools, spas, bathtubs, the ocean, and any other body of water. Whereas the themes of this year's water safety campaign, Always Watch the Water and Never Swim Alone, gives in-depth information that will be provided by staff on what Orange County residents can do to prevent drowning. Whereas the initiatives set forth in the ABCs of Water Safety Program will increase public awareness regarding proper procedures to prevent needless tragedies. And whereas the Orange County Fire Authority will be taking this opportunity to increase public awareness about drowning prevention through a diverse community outreach program. And now, therefore, I, Gene James, Mayor of the City of San Clemente, California, acting on behalf of the City Council and the citizens of San Clemente, do hereby proclaim the city's participation in the Always Watch the Water and Never Swim Alone 2022 campaigns. We have a photographer? Yeah. Come in. Very good. City Clerk?
Okay. Next is presentation of an Older Americans Month proclamation to Beth Apodaca, Director of the Dorothy Visser Senior Center.
I'm coming right back. City of San Clemente, whereas San Clemente includes countless older Americans who enrich and strengthen our communities, and whereas Age Well Senior Services is committed to engaging and supporting older adults, their families, and caregivers, and whereas we acknowledge the importance of taking part in activities that promote physical, mental, and emotional well-being, no matter your age. And whereas Dorothy Visser Senior Center can enrich the lives of individuals of every age by promoting home and community-based services that support independent living involving older adults in community planning, events, and other activities, and providing opportunities for older adults to work, volunteer, learn, lead, and mentor. Now, therefore, I, Gene James, Mayor of the City of San Clemente, acting on behalf of the City Council and the citizens of San Clemente, do hereby proclaim the month of May as Older Americans Month.
So I get my toes.
Got it? You guys in?
Yeah, we all in.
I get a wallet size photo.
Yeah. Are you gonna take this?
Yes.
You have anything to say?
It's bad. It's like, all I want to say is thank you to everybody. We've all been through this amazing ride for the last 2 years, plus years. And we've been very excited and helpful. I don't know how to say this. We're so ready to re-engage the seniors into the community. It's been a wild ride, but we're doing it. We're bringing all the programs back, and just, we really appreciate the support of the city, and everybody in the community has stepped up. And this next year is going to be amazing. So thank you.
I'll give you a call when I come to sit.
You're so like you're not 90. You have to be 90 to think you're a senior citizen, okay?
You know, one of the fun things to do as mayor is to hand out the mayor's coin.
Oh.
You know, every Friday, Mayor Pro Tem and I, the past year or so, have been at the senior center and seen the work that Beth has done. And it's amazing. And not only for this proclamation, but what a great director you are and a great example for Age Well. Thank you very much.
Next is presentation of a proclamation to the San Clemente Elks Club for in recognition of Youth Week.
So with that motley crew of board members come up, please.
Yeah, it's gonna make you look very good.
Okay, good.
That's what he uses for.
Sure. Beth,
She's not
Beth,
done yet. She's not done.
please. City of San Clemente, whereas the Benevolent and Protective Order of Elks has designated May 1 through 7th, 2022 as Youth Week to honor America's junior citizens for their accomplishments and to give fitting recognition of their services to community, state, and nation. And whereas San Clemente Elks Lodge number 2068 will sponsor observance during the week in tribute to junior citizens of this community. And whereas no event could be more deserving of our support and participation than one dedicated to these young people who represent the nation's greatest resource, and who in the years ahead will assume the responsibility for the advancement of our free society. And whereas our youth need the guidance, inspiration, encouragement, which we alone can give in order to help develop those qualities of character essential for the future leadership and go forth to serve America. And whereas to achieve this worthy objective, we should demonstrate our partnership with youth and our understanding of their hopes and aspirations and a sincere willingness to help prepare them in every way for the responsibilities and opportunities of citizenship. Now, therefore, I, Gene James, Mayor of the City of San Clemente, do hereby proclaim the first week in May as Youth Week and urge all departments of government, civic, fraternal, and patriotic groups and our citizens generally to participate wholeheartedly in this observance.
Yes, sir.
There we go. There we go. Okay. Have anything to say?
Is there a microphone?
I'm not walking away from it. Yes. Well, honestly, as the newbie elk, and in some level, I'm a little taken back because this was told to me recently, and I think that I have nothing to do with this. I think that this is everything to do with everybody else that's sitting here. So all I can do now is kind of sit here and see what I can do to drive us forward as the new exalted ruler of the Elks Lodge. But this really is theirs. This is 1,000% our membership. So I want to thank you guys very much. Can I have 10 more minutes? No, I'm just kidding. No, but thank you very much. You know, honestly, sir, thank you. It's such a pleasure. And I think
in honor and recognition of your recent advancement to exalted ruler, I would like to present you a mayor's coin.
oh my God. I'll take it. I'm done. I'm kidding. Thank you guys so much.
I'm drinking this guy.
As long as the bars open after the meeting.
And you're all over that.
Okay, city clerk, the fun is over.
Okay. The April homeless report will take place at the May 25th council meeting. Moving on to public hearings. The public hearing process includes a staff presentation, a presentation by the applicant not to exceed 10 minutes, and public testimony not to exceed 3 minutes per speaker. Following closure of the public hearing, the city council will respond to questions raised during the hearing, discuss the issues, and act upon the matter by motion. The first public hearing relates to the submission of the 2022-2023 annual action plan for expenditures of the community development block grant funds.
So public hearing's open.
Hearing is open. I don't have any cards.
Public hearing is closed. Council members?
No.
Can I have a motion?
Let's see. All right. Well, is there any discussion?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I just solicited that.
Well, from the public, but yeah,
No,
okay.
there was no comment card.
I'll move that we approve the staff recommendation for this item, or do we need to read? all of
Read
it?
it,
We need
please.
to read it. Okay. I move that we approve and adopt the draft 2022-23 annual action plan for the use of community development block grant funds, which is CDBG. Authorize the city manager to submit the annual action plan to Housing and Urban Development, HUD, to execute the HUD contract. Accept the grant revenues of $329,535 from HUD to account number 017-000-33712 and authorize a related budget appropriation of $329,535 to the CDBG fund that amounts to the 2022-23 action plan.
Second.
Motion and second.
Okay, Councilmember Ferguson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noblock,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Duncan,
Aye.
and Mayor James.
Aye.
Carries 4-0. The next public hearing is to consider all objections or protests, if any, to the proposed abatement of weeds, rubbish, refuse, and dirt upon streets, sidewalks, parkways, and private property within the city. And if you care to open the public hearing, there is one card.
Public hearing open.
The speaker is Mike. I don't have a last name.
I'd like to just make a comment about weed abatement and the bias or values that go with the allocations related to weed abatement. I don't think anyone would argue against the need to keep our beautiful city looking good and safe, and the removal of debris, et cetera, is an important activity. But I would ask that weed abatement bias be moved at least somewhat, be nudged somewhat from a value based on aesthetics and safety in the current understanding or interpretation, and be moved towards fire safety, specifically in the very high fire zones that CAL FIRE has identified inside our city limits. Revaluing weed abatement to include public safety beyond just blocking a sidewalk so that it encompasses a greater understanding would be a smart move and a smart allocation of our city's resources and a smart move towards a community response to fire load mitigation and a community response to becoming a fire safe designated city. It is a wonderful opportunity to move our awareness and our consciousness towards what it needs to be, which is more fire safe. Weed abatement and aesthetic value, getting those shopping carts out of the canyons, those are all important things. But we could be focusing at least the first part of our weed abatement towards those neighborhoods that are most affected by very high fire zone designation. I think that would be a wise use of our resources. And so I would ask that all concerned consider this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's all.
Public hearing closed.
Unless there are any comments, I would move that we adopt staff recommendation, adopt a resolution entitled a resolution of the City Council, the City of San Clemente, California, ordering the Director of Community Development to abate the nuisances by having the weeds, rubbish, refuge, and dirt removed from vacant properties and unoccupied developed properties within the city, and notifying the state, county, or any other public agency.
Second.
Councilmember Ferguson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noblock,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Duncan,
Aye.
and Mayor James.
Aye.
Carries 4-0. Under new business, first item is a report from the Community Development Director concerning a potential amendment to the municipal code to regulate bicycle repairs in public.
Good evening, Mayor James and members of the City Council. Adam Atamian, Deputy Community Development Director. This report is being brought to you tonight as a follow-up to a council initiated request to have the Public Safety Committee review a potential ordinance for the regulation of bicycle repairs in public. The committee reviewed this information. Myself and Captain Benfield were in attendance and were able to provide some information about the city's experience with a lot of bicycles in the public way. And the committee decided based on concerns about the enforceability of such an ordinance and its application to the specific problem that the council should not take this matter up and initiate an ordinance amendment. At this time, staff is seeking further direction from the council as to whether they would like staff to come back with an ordinance, which we would be prepared to do. That concludes my presentation, but I am prepared for any questions.
We have public comments,
We do.
please.
Rick Leffler.
Good evening, Council. Although I am a member of the Public Safety Committee, I was not present at the meeting where the issue of sales and repairs of bikes on public property was discussed and the recommendation was made. I would like to take this opportunity to share my opinions on this matter. 3 nearby cities have passed laws prohibiting sale or repair of bikes on public property: the city of Los Angeles, city of Huntington Beach, and the city of Long Beach. All 3 cities decided, rightly in my opinion, that by regulating this activity, they were providing a valuable tool for law enforcement to aid in the reduction of thefts of bicycles in their communities. Oh, you got my slide there. And I was interested to read the report from the Public Safety Committee that said they didn't really think that ordinances like this would have any effect on the theft of bicycles. Well, here's a press release from Long Beach Police Department dated 1/13/2020, which was a year after they enacted their bicycle ordinance. And it clearly states that property crime reduction in 6 categories, with the most significant reduction in bike thefts. And their reduction of bike thefts that year were 31.4%. which I would say is a pretty dramatic change. The Public Safety Committee noted that they felt that this wouldn't have that much effect, and apparently it does. Yeah, okay. And the before mentioned cities who also passed this ordinance do allow for sales on public property if the seller has either a seller's permit or proof of ownership of the property. So this doesn't affect if you put your bicycle on Craigslist and sell your bike out of your house. That's buyer beware. This has nothing to do with that. And I'm just so interesting, keep on hearing the enforceability. Enforceability is discretionary in all this. It's a misdemeanor. It's an infraction. The enforcement is decided by the people who are enforcing it. It's voluntary compliance, I think, will have a significant effect on this. I think you have a law against doing it on public. People don't want to mess with the police over something so minor. And I think a lot of it's going to be taken care of on compliance voluntarily. And a real quick anecdote here. I know Chris loves my anecdotes, but you read all the time on Facebook, you see Orange County sheriffs and they have like a big arrest and they show a picture with a car and a bunch of dope or guns or anything on the hood of the car. That stop was not affected because they go, oh, there's a bunch of dope and guns in that car. It was affected because of a tail light or a traffic violation. Officers used that, stopped the car, got their probable cause together and ended up moving into a big arrest. That's how those arrests take place. As a law enforcement officer, I always welcomed any tool that would assist in my ability to ensure the safety and quality of life in the community I serve. This ordinance will provide one of those tools. I urge the council to pass this ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Ferguson.
Thanks, Mayor James. I appreciate hearing the speaker. The Public Safety Committee, I value their input, seemed to vote 3-0 to 1 to recommend we not initiate this. And subsequently, we got input from staff, the agenda report says, but I don't see any content in terms of the input. Could Mr. Atamian, could you let us know what the input was from staff and the Chief of Police Services?
Starting with Captain Benfield, his comments during that meeting were related to the prevalence of bicycle thefts within the city. He was not able to comment on the potential impact of this type of regulation. However, both he and I were in agreement that we would enforce whatever laws are passed by the city council. As far as my comments, they related to the ordinance that was presented, the example from Long Beach. My comments were that I recommended that if the city council was to move forward with this, I think something a little bit more restrictive is in order. Even the Long Beach ordinance would still allow somebody to have quite a number of full bicycles and partially disassembled bicycles, along with quite a number of bicycle parks. So my recommendation would be that if they did move forward, that we make it a bit more restrictive.
Okay, so thank you. Based on that input, the committee voted against, basically the majority voted against initiating. Okay, thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
On this ordinance, generally, my default position in public policy is to not restrict the rights of people to do what they want to do. But in this case, this is a serious problem in San Clemente. I was down last Thursday in North Beach, looking across away from the new
Beach Hut
deli. And there were probably 4 or 5 bicycles with various parts of the bike. And I think this ordinance will go a long way in improving the quality of life in San Clemente and eliminating the outdoor bike shop. Bike, if I can say that, bike shop.
Yep, that's right.
Shop.
Chop shop.
Say that
Bike,
real fast
chop,
3 times. So I'm in favor of this ordinance. I do think it'll help. I think it goes a long way in eliminating the ability of people to steal bikes and then break down the parts and then sell them on the street. And I do think it'll improve the quality of life to San Clemente. So I'm in favor of the ordinance.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, echoing Steve's comments, I had the opportunity to go to North Beach actually right before the meeting today, meeting with the residents. I think I saw the exact same setup of bikes across from Beach Hut Deli. We had 2 deputies down there working with park rangers. It was actually very impressive to see. We talked a little bit with the deputies, and thank you, Captain Benfield. They were very responsive and they helped explain things for the resident. One of the things that became evident was that the more tools they have, the more ability they have to control what goes on in that North Beach area that has become very difficult to manage. So it just so happened that this individual or individuals had a bunch of bikes in the same location that Steve saw. I think this ordinance would have helped. Now they were able to use the ordinance we just passed on personal property, actually, because they were blocking an emergency exit from the railroad track. So that was another good benefit of some of the work that we've been doing. But that kind of changed my consideration on it, because I tend to follow the Public Safety Commission or committee, Rick. I didn't know you weren't there. And by the way, I think Rick's slide should have been in the staff report and other information like that. Let's make sure we get that information in there. But that changed my thinking on it and kind of got me leaning the same way as Steve. So I think I would support this staff bringing back an ordinance on this, because I think it'll be another tool to help.
I have been in North Beach in the last few days myself and observed the various bicycles in various degrees of assembly or disassembly. Additionally, the down by my house, when on the state park property, the encampments there had bicycles or various degrees of bicycles. I think this would be a very useful tool. Discretion will be a big part of enforcement here, but I think we need it because bicycle theft is an issue in the city, and all these homeless encampments tend to have a number of bicycle parts and bicycles and bicycle frames. So I will be in favor of this. May I have a motion?
I'll just move that we adopt, well, no, there is no stuff. I move that we direct staff to initiate an amendment to the San Clemente Municipal Code to regulate bicycle repairs in public.
Second.
City Manager, how are you going to do this?
So I'm glad you asked that question. And so, yes, we started off with the ordinance from the city of Long Beach, and as the Public Safety Committee has deliberated on a few other ones. I know in talking to Adam Atamian, our Deputy Director of Community Development, they have some additional wants that they'd like to add into that ordinance beyond what Long Beach did. And so I think and I'm looking at our city attorney, I think with the latitude given tonight to direct staff to draft an ordinance, it'll be kind of a potpourri of staff input, as well as using Long Beach and other ordinances to make sure we have a very sealed type ordinance to enforce.
And when do you anticipate bringing that back for first reading?
I would probably estimate, because we're going to be looking at maybe just one meeting on the 25th, I would probably look to the first or second meeting in June to bring that back to the council.
Does that work for everyone? Yep.
It does. I just have one question before we vote.
Sure.
Thanks, Mayor James. Could either the city manager or maybe our public safety member can respond. I'm still not understanding why the committee would vote against this. There's no comments from them or any reasoning before I vote. I just want to know, because I like the discussion we had, but in the report, it doesn't say, and I value the
Right.
members we appointed, but it doesn't say why they voted no.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
If I could just add something to that,
Mhm.
my thought is it had Mr. Loeffler been there,
Mhm.
the vote would have been much different.
I wasn't there, so I have talked to one other member, and I think.
Excuse me, Ms. Loeffler, could you go in the microphone, and I'd love to hear so the public can.
Other
Thank
member,
you.
I think that was very candid,
Thank
and
you.
that is true. I had done a lot of research on my own when I saw this coming up and pulled a lot of information that I don't think that they had. And I think the feeling was very similar to why do we need another thing, another law? And I just don't think that the information was put out enough. I think maybe if I was there, maybe the vote would have come out different.
Okay.
Maybe it wouldn't have, but I think with all the information,
Mhm.
I think it'll be useful.
I appreciate what you presented tonight.
Did you get
Thank
your
you.
question answered?
I did. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Can I have a motion?
We had the motion.
Do we have a second?
Second. Yeah, he had the
Okay.
second.
Councilmember Ferguson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noblock, Mayor Pro Tem Duncan,
Aye.
and Mayor James.
Aye.
Carries 4-0.
Thank you.
The next item is report from the Economic Development Officer concerning zoning for electric vehicle dealerships.
Good evening, Mayor James, Mayor Pro Tem Duncan, and council. This item is a follow-up from the discussion at the long-term financial plan, where we had a consultant present a couple of opportunities for revenue improvements in the future. And one of those opportunities was a look at electronic vehicles in that new market and whether there could be opportunities in that segment. And the report in front of you highlighted some of the work that's already ongoing with our community development department. We also have Cecilia Gallardo-Daly, our community development director, available if there's questions about that process. But we just wanted to give the council the opportunity to review where we are in that process and to highlight that that is something that's ongoing. The Planning Commission has already had a couple of study sessions, and they have recommended that we look at delineating between traditional vehicle models and the newer electric vehicle model sales, and look at ways to incorporate that into the specific plan updates in a way that would make that process more streamlined for those types of uses. That really concludes the information I have to share at this point. There's not a specific recommendation since this is an ongoing process. The amendments would go through Planning Commission first and would come back to you, the City Council, as their final stop in their journey. I am available if there are any questions, as is Ms. Gallardo-Daly. Thank you.
Mayor James, I have
Yes, please.
I have a comment or two. I like the concept. I'm in favor of the concept, but I think we need to expand the opportunities which staff has been discussing with our planning commissioner relating to the Rancho San Clemente Business Park. I understand the general plan concept to remove our sort of ma and pa small used car lots off of Del Mar and move those uses into the business park. But electric vehicle is the wave of the future. It would potentially create a massive tax revenue for our city. And rather than just going into the Rancho San Clemente Business Park, I'd like to see other areas of town potentially take advantage of this opportunity. For example, at the outlets, there are a number of large parcels that are currently undeveloped, including the out parcels, phase 2, vacant land, potentially. And I've talked to the developers, the outlets owners, so I don't know what they're thinking is, but I know there's at least 3 or more fairly significant parcels right on the freeway with two major exits, which would be a draw if we ever were to get an electric vehicle facility, as opposed to driving off onto our streets back into the business center. I just think it'd be better located. And again, I'm just saying, and there may be other opportunities farther north. I'm just suggesting that we not limit this opportunity just to the San Clemente Business Park. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, can I ask you a question on what you're looking at there? Are you talking about if you're I'm trying to conceptualize what you're saying. So if you're talking about something at the outlets, would that be a building in which there'd be a showroom, or are you talking about a lot displaying cars?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure the extent of the use. I understand that the current uses that have been considered involve a small showroom, a relatively small repair facility, and not hundreds and hundreds of cars like you see on, a large, like the mile of cars up in Lake
Right.
Forest and so forth. It would be a relatively smaller facility where people would buy and pick up their car. We'd capture the tax revenue, but we wouldn't have a massive facility. So Mayor James, I'm not sure about the scope. I just know that what we're looking at for Rancho San Clemente, it would be nice to have other parts of town potentially have the same opportunity to compete for the same business.
And I like what you're saying. The devil is in the details, because then we're going to get into signage. We're going to, and we're going to get into how it's used. But I think it's worthy of discussion.
Yeah, I mean, the model for the as we sort of read in the report is really sort of one car even maybe, right? You're coming in, it's a relatively small facility. In a lot of
Relatively small,
cases, you come in, you kind of see what these vehicles look like, and then you design on a computer the kind of vehicle you want. You come back and pick it up later. So it wouldn't have to be very big. As long as it was something like that, I don't see why we wouldn't want to look broader.
As I understand the Tesla model, you either do it online or you go to a mall like Mission Viejo and you make all your selections, and then 6 weeks or 6 months, whatever it is later, you get a call and your car is there. And if we have a point of distribution, we become the point of sale.
Yeah.
And we generate tax revenue,
Huge tax revenue potentially.
which we don't get right now. So I think it's all worthy of. Councilmember Ferguson, I don't know whether we've gone to you yet, or we
No,
have.
I concur. I concur with all the points made
Okay.
tonight. I'm supportive. Thank you.
So I would move, I guess, that we receive and file the report, but instruct staff and the planning commission to consider expanding the opportunities from the Rancho San Clemente to potentially other parts of town. And without being specific, just that concept be
Yeah.
expanded.
A second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Sure.
Councilmember Ferguson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noblock,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Duncan.
Aye.
Mayor James.
Aye.
Carries 4-0. Next item is report from the city manager concerning the city manager's contract authority to execute contracts on behalf of the city.
So good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'll be very brief. This was a item that was directed by the City Council to be brought back as referenced by a previous public comment at our strategic planning session. That concern was raised. So what I put before you tonight is the current policies and ordinances that were adopted recently as the council increased the city manager's contract authority, and I stand ready to answer any questions.
Councilmember Ferguson, you brought this up, so I think.
I did. Thank you. And I've actually prepared my comments so I can stay on track on this and focus. But the agenda report, yes, I did bring it up at the April 12th strategic planning workshop. The agenda report is missing a few things, and I'm just going to fill in some of the holes. The workshop, for example, was approved in a $9,600 contract. I already wrote the city manager when that happened because it wasn't placed on the agenda, and that's what the policy requires when items that are contracts are entered into are not consistent with the adopted budget. So that meeting, the item was actually mentioned to hire a strategic planning consultant at a council meeting, but it never actually made it onto the agenda for discussion and for the public input. and approval of the contract. Even though staff did say at one of the meetings it would come to council, but it didn't. So this is about accountability with the taxpayer money and transparency. So this led me to, at the workshop, that the city manager didn't have any authority in the city's municipal code, I had stated, after a speaker had spoke at that meeting. So we just can't find surplus money in other funds and enter into contracts. It has to be consistent with the budget. And that's what the municipal code chapter 2.0809 states. So if it's not in the budget, it's inconsistent, and any contracts must be placed on an agenda for the city council to approve. And we meet every 2 weeks. So really those in-between times should really be contracts that are consistent with line items in the budget that are approved every June by council, or emergency items. So the policy that we have, which is aligned with the ordinance, doesn't give a city manager, and I'm not just picking on anybody here, I'm just, this is important to clarify for future city managers. So if it does not give carte blanche to a city manager under the current authority of 50,000 to spend whatever we want. And I'm not here to change the spending authority either. That's been approved by the majority council and that's in place. But he can only do this if it's consistent again with the budget. So I proceeded to suggest we agendize this and had support from Mayor James and Councilmember Knobloch. Though I'm pleased, the council supported having transparency and accountability in terms of posting all of the contracts the city manager enters into on the website, and also reporting out at council meetings, which was not done before. So now we know what contracts are being entered into and the public did not know before. I think it's really important that we always make sure, the city manager makes sure that, again, those contracts are consistent with the budget as required with the municipal code, and therefore are properly entered into, because you know we're supposed to be spending less money right now and not more, considering our high pension unfunded pension liability debt of almost $50 million. So that's really concerning to me. Every penny matters. So in addition to, I'm just going to give a couple other examples for the public, a couple other examples of contracts that were entered into. In addition to this, consultant for strategic planning was hiring an investigator and recently for a harassment complaint, and then $49,500. Well, that was $25,000, and then $49,500 to hire back in December a communications outreach campaign consultant. Just to communicate, not elected official campaigns, but health and hospital survey results, et cetera. So neither of those were consistent with what this council approved in June of 2021. So also in the recommended action here tonight is just to receive and file the administrative report. In other words, if you look at it, there's no analysis or explanation. The agenda report just, it recites the policies in the ordinance. And I actually will propose a motion tonight after discussion that I would like my colleagues to consider. It's not to change again spending authority, but it's to clarify what is proper in terms of entering contracts outside of public view and without city council putting their stamp of approval on it. And then as elected officials and good fiscal stewards, we're duty bound to protect the taxpayer's purse, and we cannot abdicate our responsibilities to unelected city staff. So no one elected city manager, but we as city council can and must do better with taxpayer money. So again, Mayor James and council, I'm going to hold off on just proposing some clarifications to consider with this policy and municipal code that we have going forward after discussion. Thank you.
Councilman Knobloch?
I just say, I agree with Councilwoman Ferguson's comments on the contracts that the city enters into needs to be consistent with the budget. We don't want to go outside what we've authorized expenditure wise. So if that's a motion, or if that's your thing, I can kind of support the concept. I have no, beyond that, I have no comments on the report.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I have no comments.
City manager, would you like to address Councilmember Ferguson's concerns?
When the city council reviews and adopts a budget, you're not adopting or approving contracts as part of that budget. You're approving the appropriation of money to match the expenditures for the city of San Clemente. And so all of these contracts referenced were in compliance with the municipal code, as well as in compliance with the budget as it relates to the budget line items that they served. All of the contracts were compliant within the policy set forth by the council within my signature authority. And that's all I have to say at this time.
May I respond? Thank you. Yes, and the city manager and I have discussed this verbally a couple of meetings ago right here. And as he said, we have a difference of opinion. We're going to agree to disagree on this. And I worked at the city for 18 and a half years. So, and I am aware after talking to a couple of former city managers, they never entered into contracts between council meetings, which happen every 2 weeks, unless it was an emergency. So this is out of the norm for us to do that. But that aside, I would like to make a motion if I may. Are you
Please.
available for me to entertain that motion for me? Okay, so first I'd like to make a motion for 3 items again, to just clarify and incorporate this so that first, any contract must designate what page and line item in the adopted budget describes the approved expenditure along with the description as to why it's necessary. Or a hybrid of that. Second, except in emergency conditions, a term of the written contract, the contract must include a standard provision drafted by the city attorney that the contract must be approved by city council before it becomes operative. So it can be worked on, right, and negotiated, but it needs to be approved by council before it actually becomes operative. Third, the details on selection of why was a particular vendor selected to enter into a contract. So we have RFPs, a bidding process. Typically when the public has seen us approve contracts and they'll be layered with various quotes, usually 3. So for this, why that vendor was selected and why that amount, what other vendors were considered and what amounts did those vendors propose. We want the best price with the best experience, right? And then lastly, what necessitated the city manager to enter into that contract rather than bringing it to city council for approval. So just understanding all of those things. And I've typed it out if all of you would like to support that tonight. Again, these are clarifying instructions for managing and protecting the taxpayer dollars and just making sure contracts are entered into appropriately. So it would be entered into or modified into the policy that we have.
City manager, how would that impact your effectiveness?
It would impact it significantly. My request would be that if that was something that the council wanted to entertain, reduce my contract authority. Because again, I want to make it very clear. I'm only spending money that's already budgeted and appropriated in the budget pursuant to the direction and priorities of the city council and the city.
Mayor James, we just had.
I'm sorry, if I may, all of those contracts that were referenced were done through a competitive process from a procurement standpoint as well.
Thank you.
We just had our strategic meeting and the things we discussed are kind of ringing in my head. We on the council, it's not our role to get down in the nitty gritty of everything that the city does. We provide a basic overview and accountability, and the city manager is accountable to us. So when the city manager does something we don't like, we have the ability to take action and provide direction, but we can't be second guessing or down in the weeds with the city manager making every single decision for the city. We don't have the capacity to do that. We hire a strong city manager and an excellent staff to support the city manager to do all of these things. This is not our role. Our role is high level general direction, not every single contract. So I would not support this. I think it would adversely affect staff's operation and urge the council not to move forward with that motion.
Councilmember Noblock, any further comment?
Yeah, I have a question as well. And that is currently the contracts, Mr. City Manager, that you enter into on your own, that you report to us later on, Do those contracts have a provision that says that the contract is only effective when the city, by virtue of the mayor, signs the contract?
No, because those contracts that I enter into do not require the mayor's signature. I have the authority both via the municipal code and the policy to execute and enter into those contracts.
Okay, so contracts above $50,000 that come to this council generally have all of the criteria that Councilwoman Ferguson is suggesting in terms of competitive bids, the explanation.
Absolutely. And as I report out under city manager comments, those contracts, it is at that point where council can ask me questions. Did that contract get competitively bid? Or what was the justification for that? Which is the purpose of my disclosure publicly on those documents as well.
But when we ask those questions, the contract's already been let, correct?
Correct.
So if we didn't like the answers, we'd have to just suck it up.
Well, again, you're not going to get an answer you don't like because my actions all comply with the municipal code as it relates to the procurement policies within the city, as well as within the appropriated budget. So, again, to the point of those were not competitively bid, that's not true. We did an RFP for those contracts that were mentioned by the council members. So they were compliant with our procurement policy. And some of our contracts are single or sole source, depending on the nature of their services, which again is compliant within our procurement policy as well. So I'm completely available and open to those questions coming up when those contracts are announced.
Okay, well, my only final comment is that I think generally it's a positive thing for any community to have absolute transparency in what their city's doing. And without getting into the weeds, I think this is a reasonable request. And if the response is, if you're going to do this, just reduce my authority. I don't particularly like that response. I think that response is sort of a back in your face. I'm just not going to do it and cut my authority if you decide to make me be more accountable. So I didn't like that response very much, but I'm going to support the motion and I'll second it.
So my comments are very similar to the Mayor Pro Tem. The city manager has a spending authority at $50,000. Those contracts are reported out to us at every meeting. If we don't trust our city manager to make the right decision time after time, then we have the wrong city manager. I don't think we have the wrong city manager. I'm not going to support this. So City Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ferguson,
Yes.
Councilmember Noblock,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Duncan,
No.
Mayor James.
No.
Motion fails 2-2.
Excuse me, City Clerk, would you like my typed up motion for the minutes? I'll provide it to you before I go.
Okay,
Thank you.
You're on, City Clerk.
I am on. Okay, the next item is report of the city clerk concerning the calling of the general municipal election on November 8th. The next general municipal election in San Clemente will take place on November 8th, 2022. And at that election, the voters in San Clemente will be asked to fill the terms of 3 members of the city council. Those seats are currently filled by Laura Ferguson, Steve Noblock, and Kathy Ward. And those terms will be for the full term of 4 years. The candidate filing period for members of the city council will run from July 18th, 2022 to August 12th, 2022 at 5 p.m. If any of the 3 incumbents whose terms are due to expire this year do not file for re-election by August 12th, the filing period will be extended to August 17th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. for all San Clemente registered voters except the incumbents. So at this time, I would request that council adopt the resolutions that are necessary to call the election. The first one actually calls the election for November 8th, 2022, to include the election of 3 members, 3 members of the city council. The second resolution requests that the County Board of Supervisors allow the city to consolidate its election with the general election being conducted by the county on that date. The third resolution is to adopt regulations for candidate statements for candidates for the elective offices. The fourth resolution is optional. You do not need to adopt this resolution. That resolution would only be operative in the event that the election results in a tie vote among the top vote receivers. If council does not adopt the election before you, which would call a runoff election in the event that happens. If council doesn't adopt such a resolution before the election, state law requires that the tie be broken by a lot, such as drawing names out of a hat.
Flip of a coin.
And that would work too.
I could support all of these four resolutions, but I would like to say and bring up a matter. We some months ago had a discussion about discussed sort of a conflict of interest where elected city treasurer or elected city clerk are employed by our city manager. And we discussed adopting an ordinance to prevent that potential conflict of interest. Because in the past, we've had city treasurers be full-time employees reporting to the city manager. We've had until recently full elected city clerk, full-time employee reporting to the city manager. And what I'd like to see is maybe in addition to these four resolutions, have an ordinance introduced to limit that. And that ordinance could be literally one sentence or two sentences. I've talked to our city attorney and he can have that done in a matter of an hour or less. So I would recommend that we agendize for approval an ordinance to prohibit the employment by elected officials by the city beyond their capacity, beyond their elective capacity.
One of the things we also talked about at that time was to have an appointed city clerk and city treasurer. And I'm trying to remember why we didn't pursue that, why we didn't look further into that.
Well, I don't recall. I do recall that we did discuss that, and
See,
the election is coming up, and we have a time frame on that. I'd like to have the ordinance in place, and maybe at the same time discuss it. But I think that discussion probably needs to be out of an election cycle for this. But it could be.
See, man, do you recall
I recall many times that councils have deliberated on this very subject of appointment versus elected as it relates to the treasurer and the city clerk.
But we recently, the last one.
Recently, yes, you voted it and you did not get majority support. to
That's
put
right.
it
I
on the
brought it up
ballot.
and we didn't get support on council.
Correct.
Okay, that, I just wanted, okay. I will second that motion and have to agendize that.
And would that be with an ordinance in front of us, or just to discuss whether to do an ordinance?
Well, we start running into a time crunch here. Can we have, city clerk, can we agendize it and then bring an ordinance back? Then we'd have to have two readings of that ordinance.
Well, I don't think such an ordinance would affect the election.
Right.
Correct? I mean, the city attorney agreed with me. That's
Yeah,
not
so-
something that has to go to the voters.
Yeah, so
So
there's two ideas, and I'm not sure if you're talking about one or both, but to just say the clerk and treasurer cannot be city employees, that could happen
That's
anytime
easy.
with first and second
Yeah,
reading.
we went through this. I asked you that, and if it needed to be an ordinance, you said no. it's just a
Doesn't have
policy
to, but
Decision by
yeah.
council, when Councilmember Noblock brought this up a few months ago, you're right. So I guess it just needs.
So
to
let's
let-
agenda.
Let's agendize it with I'd like to have
Mhm.
see the ordinance so we could know what we're discussing. So
Right.
yeah, I can second that motion, but
So we need a third.
I'll be the third. Happily be the third.
So you're given direction, just to clarify, you're given direction to bring an amended ordinance, amending our current code as it relates to the city clerk and the treasurer to reflect they cannot also be a full-time employee with the city of San Clemente.
Right.
That's correct. And there was something that the city attorney just said. I think he said it doesn't have to be an ordinance. It could just be direction of council.
Well, Councilmember Ferguson said that it can be a council policy or an ordinance, whichever you prefer.
So let's look at both options.
And then agendizing the concept of appointment was a separate item. And I'd like, if your motion encompassed agendizing that, I'll second that as well.
Please.
Okay, but you're not saying for the November election about that the city clerk and city treasurer be appointed? Because if so, that will change the resolutions calling the election.
No, I don't think we're going down that road yet.
No. We want to
Okay,
keep-
that's just to agendize. Just want to make sure, because once these go to the register of voters.
Right.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah, what we told you, forget that. We're actually not having elections for this. We're appointing it.
But yeah,
Oops.
Mitch and Dale extended their term somehow, some way. Have we voted?
Just
on
kidding,
this?
Joanne.
yet.
We're not going to do
don't kid on elections.
that.
We're not messing with.
I'm
the
a city
four
clerk. I'm
resolutions.
very nervous. Okay,
Do we have to?
okay,
read-
got that.
Yeah.
So what I need from you now,
Someone
our
needs to
motion-
read that.
Someone needs to read the motion.
Go, Chris.
Yeah, I'll read it. Okay.
Mayor,
Oh.
sorry, I don't want to burden you, but I just want to be super clear that everybody understands what Jan's saying. The issue of whether to appoint or elect the clerk and treasurer has to go on the ballot to change.
Okay,
And
we're-
so what you need to decide tonight is if you want to send these resolutions to the registrar without deciding that question, because I think once these
We-
missiles are
We've already
fired,
talked
you
about the
can't-
We've already
appointment.
talked about it. Let's.
you did. Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
let's not complicate.
You can talk about it all you want, but you can't include it
Right,
in
right.
these
No, I
resolutions
got it.
once they're sent.
yes.
2 years, we'll talk about 2 years
O-
from now.
Okay,
All right. I move that we adopt resolution number 22-13 entitled "A Resolution of the City Council of the City of San Clemente, California, calling for holding of a general municipal election to be held on Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. The election of certain officers as required by the provisions of laws of the state of California relating to general law cities. And that we adopt resolution number 22-14 entitled "A Resolution of the City Council of the City of San Clemente, California, requesting the Board of Supervisors of the County of Orange to consolidate a general municipal election to be held on November 8th, 2022, with the general election to be held on that date pursuant to section 10403 of the Elections Code." And that we adopt resolution number 22-15 entitled "A Resolution of the City Council of the City of San Clemente, California, adopting regulations for candidates for elective office pertaining to candidate statements submitted to the voters at an election to be held on Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. And that we determine whether,
Mhm.
and that we determine whether to. or we-
yes, you either make a motion to adopt the resolution, which in the event there were a tie vote.
Yeah, okay, so.
Would require a
Yeah,
runoff election.
And that we adopt a optional resolution number 22-16 entitled "A Resolution of the City Council of the City of San Clemente, California, providing for the conduct of a special runoff election for elective offices in the event of a tie vote on any municipal election."
And the fifth provision would be come back with an ordinance on the public policy prohibition of.
And that we direct staff to come back with a draft ordinance and or policy that provides that the elected city treasurer and city clerk cannot also be employees of the city.
City clerk, are those two motions, two different motions, or are you okay
Well,
with?
you
the
already
new-
had it to agendize it.
Okay,
There were
Yeah.
3 votes, so
Got it.
it's not necessary. It would just be redundant.
Okay, then
Very
cancel
good.
that last part.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
I'll second that motion.
well, I'll withdraw the motion because I think we're already there. So we'll make it clean with these 4. So yeah,
Eliminate the fifth.
we're
provision,
eliminating
just
the
four
fifth.
policies on the agenda.
Just the 4 policies, yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, Councilmember Ferguson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noblock.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Duncan
Aye.
and Mayor James.
Aye.
Carries 4-0. Okay, so now we are at reports. City manager.
I have nothing to report.
Well, city manager, I got something to bring up with you. We've talked about this very briefly, parking in the downtown area, particularly as it relates to parking at the senior center and sourcing other parking. I think it's, as we get into outdoor dining, we have 10 applicants. That sounds like something like 20 or some parking spots. There's a couple, I think we need to start looking at how we're going to deal with parking, particularly on Sunday when we have farmers market. And so a couple things I want you to look at. We've talked about the senior center, and please brief the senior center. But then I think we need to look at reducing all-day parking to 3 hours in a lot of locations. Unfortunately, I think many of our employees in Del Mar are using that all day long. I don't want to make their life difficult, but we need to open up parking, and we need to figure out how to do it without punishing anyone or without making things difficult. I'm not looking for a parking study, but I am looking to find additional opportunities for parking, even if it's in private lots where we lease the space after business hours, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. So with regards to the senior center, one of the things that we looked at kind of as part of the pandemic, they stopped doing evening programming and weekend programming at the senior center. And so one of the things that we looked at was looking to expand that senior center parking lot to become a public parking lot for downtown Del Mar. We are in the process. Thankfully, I want to give a shout out to Beth and Agewell for working with us, where that parking lot will be available after 5 p.m. on weekdays, and on the weekends, it'll be available for public parking. So that will add roughly 20-ish parking spots to the downtown public parking option. As it relates to the other requests, Mayor, I think our community development department is well suited. They've done the parking studies numerous times over the course of the last 5 years. With the theme that you've given in terms of let's look at those all-day parking lots and come up with some restrictions. I think that's something that we can do easily without hiring a consultant and provide those recommendations to those public-private lots that we have. I do want to give a shout out to Captain Benfield and his OCSD team. We have been receiving some complaints about those public parking lots being utilized beyond their hours of operation. And we have a CSO who has been super diligent and hitting those parking lots and addressing those with parking citations. And so we can definitely bring that back at a future council meeting.
Thank you very much.
Okay. City Attorney,
Nothing more to report tonight. Thank you.
council members.
Well, I just have
Please.
one item. Thanks,
Okay.
Mayor James. Since by the time we meet next on May 25th for the next council meeting, National Police Week, which is May 11 through the 17th, will have passed. So I just want to recognize a special week when Americans pause to say collective thank you to the men and women who wear and carry the badge, and thank all the police and deputies for the work that they do in their commitment to protect and serve. And I wanted to suggest that the city put on their social media and website that this week is happening when it becomes, let's see, May 11th through the 17th. Thank you.
Yes, I will agree with that if we need more votes.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
No, I'm good today.
So I'm glad no one has anything because I got like 4 items. So I appreciate the idea of desalination being brought to council. It's something we're going to have to do. However, I do have a concern, actually several concerns. In 2016, behind the city's back, a group of environmental groups agreed upon a settlement with the TCA. Essentially, the settlement was the environmental groups would not oppose a toll route through the middle of San Clemente if the TCA would pay them $28 million. We spoke about this $28 million earlier. It was typical environmentalist extortion, and the TCA was all too willing to take part in placing a scar of concrete and steel through our city. The $28 million we pay upon extension of the 241 toll road. This started our city's expensive and lengthy fight with the TCA in order to protect the citizens of San Clemente. One of the environmental groups was the South Orange County Surf Riders chapter. Its chair at the time was a Mr. Rick Erkeneff. Today, he's the vice chair, and his wife Denise still plays a significant role as surf rider. With the promise to receive a share of the $28 million, Surfrider agreed to stand by and not oppose the toll road. By the way, the Erkeneffs don't live in San Clemente, they live in Dana Point. Have no doubt, Mr. Erkeneff sold out San Clemente in return for millions. I've recently learned the same Mr. Urkeneff is currently the president of the South Coast Water District, the same water district that is proposing building the desal plant in Dana Point and has asked San Clemente to take part. I agree this project has to be considered. However, there's no way we should have any confidence in Mr. Urkeneff's intentions, as they say, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. To be clear, Urkeneff and the Surfrider Foundation of South Orange County sold out San Clemente and should never be forgiven. And if we decide to take part in this project, we should be prepared for another backstabbing. Although City Council gave the city manager authority to provide a letter of support to the project, I'm asking that authority be withheld until we can do a poll of San Clemente citizens regarding regarding fair water rates. 2, the comfort with a bond for a desal. 3, we have a financial analysis done on the project for taxpayers. Again, I think it's something we need to look at without a doubt. I mean, we have water coming to us from the Colorado River and from Northern California that crosses 5 fault lines. Our reservoirs are falling. However, I do have concern with Mr. Urkeneff being involved with the South Coast Water District. So I would like to take that authority away from the city manager right now to send a letter of support, and until we get some information from the comfort. City manager, how would you poll the citizens on this?
I think we would have to first connect with South Coast Water to talk about some of the financial implications and some of the other things. And then we would work with a polling agency to poll San Clemente ratepayers within our water department to first ask the question of whether they are interested in desalination water, and then 2, provide what information we can provide as to what those rate implications could mean to them as a ratepayer.
Does everyone agree with me that we should be cautious as we look at our dealings with the South Coast Water District?
Well, a couple comments. Mayor James, I agree with you completely that the environmental groups that opposed vehemently putting the toll road through the back country where no people live for $28 million had no problem standing down while the TCA threatened to put a toll road through the middle of our town. That was outrageous. I think if you follow the money, you can check people's motivations, and I think you've given a good example of that. Regarding the desal, I think the 1 year that this council approved to begin the process of looking at exactly what you pointed out, the finances of a desal facility, whether our citizens would approve it or not, those things are going to be happening within the next year. I couldn't agree with you more. The comments that you made about Mr. what's his name, Urkeneff? Urkeneff. I don't know Mr. Urkeneff, but oftentimes people wear multiple hats. And the fact that he happens to be on the South Coast Water District, that's a governmental body elected by the people of that district. He happens to be one member. I don't think you can impute the evil motives that you've described to the water district or to the desal project. I think that poisons the well. And I kind of disagree.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. But so I disagree with that concept. Clearly, we have the ability to look at the district and their intention and who's running the district and how they'll operate. So I wouldn't ascribe to the water district evil motives because one person, no more than we could look at Black Lives Matter and say, look, they just marched in our town last week. They had 30 people blocking traffic. It was ridiculous to see them waving their fists and chanting dangerous chants like they're used to doing, and say one of our council members marched with Black Lives Matter with his fist raised in the air, chanting those same chants. So to ascribe motives to one member of elected body, I think goes beyond the policy issues that we need to consider. So I kind of agree that the analysis needs to be done, but I don't think we should withdraw the process of a letter of support.
Mayor, could I just raise a point of order that I think we're fine where we
Yeah,
stand
yeah,
now.
we're in discussion.
Yeah, I'd ask you to add this to the agenda as
So-
late breaking if it
so-
can't
so-
wait.
So let me
or just put it
agendize
on next time.
pulling that letter then. Okay.
The letter hasn't gone, so if it can wait till your
Yeah,
next
yeah,
meeting, then you can
thank-
have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We get ourselves out of control here, I know.
That's all with the right intentions.
So item number 2, last week, the city of San Clemente was given a D- on campaign financing by a group called Citizens Take Action. They completely missed the fact we have campaign contribution limits, completely missed it on individuals. However, they have a valid point that our website is difficult to navigate and we need a system to query by donor, PAC, and candidate. I appreciate the fact I appreciate the study, as flawed as it is, because it sent me down a path of researching candidates, contribution, PACs, and amounts. We do need to improve. Unfortunately, the dark money of PACs is in our town. People from out of town are contributing into our campaign at the rate of tens of thousands of dollars. I think we need to bring transparency to that. And the only way you bring transparency into it is to make the PDFs, the 460s, the 700s, the 461s. I know I'm missing one form here. Is there a 465 as well?
No.
No,
Other
461,
number, not
460.
460.
You get the idea. Make them searchable.
Aren't they currently on our website?
They're on the website, but if you, but it's hard to pull them up, and it would be good if we had a
Search engine?
search engine. And right now, all the forms are on PDF. And I do know there is a program that makes PDFs searchable. I think Kate would agree with that, or Brian would agree with that. I would like to agendize bringing that back on how to improve our website as it relates to campaign financing. I saw some really disconcerting things there. I won't even go into it because then this becomes a political discussion. But I think bringing transparency to our website, to our campaign financing through our website, would be an ideal thing to do. This Citizens Take Action or take charge, whatever, they completely missed the fact that we do in fact have campaign limits in place. And city manager, earlier today, we talked about Citizens United. Is it Citizens United?
Yes, that's right.
And that case, and how you can't control independent expenditures.
Right.
And can you control PACs from the amount of money that they put into a individual candidate's campaign?
If they're independent, i.e. not controlled by the candidate, then there's nothing you can regulate locally in terms of limiting that.
So a PAC could put $20,000 into a candidate's campaign.
That's right. If they're not controlled by the
This is
candidate.
one more
yeah.
reason why we need to have transparency. I really think.
I'd like some clarification on that, city attorney.
Mhm.
My understanding is an independent expenditure can be spent on an unlimited amount in a campaign.
Right.
But there can be no coordination with the candidate themselves.
Right.
So
That's why
in other words, if you gave the candidate $20,000, that would be coordination. You can't do that.
and then, right. That's
You
right.
can only, you could spend $20,000 on mailers of your own without coordinating. I think what Mayor James is talking about is an actual contribution to a candidate.
Yes.
An independent committee can't do that. Wait. I beg your
Cannot.
pardon.
They cannot.
They
They're
cannot.
controlled by this. They're controlled by the contribution limit, just like an individual is, right?
No, they're not.
Really?
An independent committee can give money to a candidate, but they can't be controlled by the candidate.
Really?
Or I
Okay.
can-
Well, I'd
yeah,
like to
that's
follow
my
up on that.
understanding from a quick
I
survey
did not,
this afternoon.
that's not my
Can we
understanding.
get?
Yeah,
a-
do you want me to do that?
Was
Yeah.
your point, Was your point to agendize the discussion? of that?
Yeah, let's.
Yeah, let me
I
do the
can
research
support-
on
I
all
can
those
support the
scenarios. Thank
Discussion
you.
on transparency.
Okay.
I couldn't
Thank
agree
you.
more.
And on the previous direction, if you're done with that item, which was to agendize possibly pulling the letter, I never heard support.
No, we're not pulling the letter right now.
No, to agendize it.
To agendize it.
Mhm,
Yes.
That's a
but
good
you
point.
need one other person.
I need
to
one
get it
other
on the
person.
agenda.
I'm pulling the letter.
On agendizing the possibility of
Agendizing.
pulling the letter.
Okay,
None?
none. Okay, that
Okay,
fails.
it won't be agendized.
Can I go back on my soapbox?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're the chair. You can do whatever you want.
I don't cross the city clerk. I'm very concerned about the Sandag pathing study. Sandag is the Regional Transportation Planning Authority for San Diego County, but think of it as TCA, OCTA, a host of other things from planning to public safety, all lumped into one government agency. It is indeed a government agency gone awry. They are so outside their wheelhouse. They are now planning the double tracking of our beach. Oh, let me go back. Sandag stands for San Diego Association of Governments. Keep in mind, San Diego Association of Governments. They're planning a double tracking of our beach to include a track where trains could wait to continue on single track from North Beach. In the Sandag pathing study, they call us the San Clemente bottleneck. Bottleneck? No, we're not a bottleneck. We're homes. We're a community. We're people. We're a dream that we have worked hard to achieve. We're not a bottleneck for some bureaucrats to try to destroy. This will be a fight that will make our struggles with the corrupt TCA board seem like child's play. We have to prepare now. I would like to propose a motion to direct staff to one, have OCTA and Sandag give us a presentation on their intentions for our beach. Two, include in those presentations, I want to hear about their intentions to move forward with the absolute lunacy of VMT, vehicle miles traveled. They're both looking at VMT. That is a transponder that goes on your car, and this quasi-government agency will know where you've been, what you've done, not what you've done, but where you've been, where you've stopped, how fast you've gone, how many miles you have driven, and then at the end of the month, they send you a bill for the amount of miles you have driven. This is in order to fund all their projects. Three, I would like to change the name of the toll road subcommittee to the transportation subcommittee because it looks like we're going to have a bigger issue to deal with. Keep in mind this plan by Sandag, and I assume with the concurrence OCTA, will also include 22 freight trains moving through our city every 24 hours. It's also my understanding that currently there's an environmental impact report being conducted by OCTA and Metrolink looking at this double tracking. So I have a motion. Can I get a second on that motion? Do I need to read
This
it?
is to agendize.
To agendize, yes.
meeting.
Second.
On the motion, it's not a motion, it's a request to agendize. You don't need to
Requested.
vote on it. But
Yeah.
regarding that issue, my concern, Mayor James, is that, you can take the most abhorrent idea and the more frequently you repeat it, the more normal it sounds. And you've mentioned some pretty abhorrent public policy issues that I think we would all agree with you 1,000% on. I'm concerned about having them come here and making a pitch to our community on why the mileage issue is good and why double tracking is good. I think we need to know what they're doing. I'm just a little concerned about giving them a
How do we,
forum.
do you want to do 2x2 briefings?
Well, I don't know. I'm just.
City manager, your thoughts?
Based on previous council direction, we are in the process of we're scheduling 2x2s with the council with OCTA regarding their Sarah sighting project, which was already given direction at a previous council meeting. In addition, there's already been direction to bring OCTA back to do a presentation on Sarah siding after the 2x2s have occurred. So that's in the works and you'll be getting that. But
Is Sarah siding, does that include the double tracking?
yes, it does.
That's what Sarah siding is.
Yep.
And then
Did you say Sarah?
Sarah.
Sarah, SERRA.
And then separately, what I hear tonight is the possibility of getting 2x2s by Sandag on their project. And what I might recommend is let's do the 2x2s with Sandag. And after you've had the 2x2s, if you feel that it's imperative to agendize and have them come do a special presentation, we can do.
No, I appreciate what you're saying, Councilmember Noblock. It's just, we've got to nip this
Yeah.
in the bud now.
Yeah, you got to know what's going on. I agree with that completely. I like the idea of 2x2s, and then if we need to,
I think that's a better idea. Thank you.
One thing, city manager, is I believe that the Sandag project is the same project that OCTA is working on. It may be that OCTA and Sandag present to us, and then we don't need two separate ones, if that might logistically work.
And I can definitely find out. I do know that OCTA has met with Sandag and the North County Transit District recently. And so I think when you get the 2x2s with OCTA, that might facilitate, hey, maybe then Sandag comes with you to do a presentation holistically on this project.
Okay.
What is the North County?
They are the.
That's the Metro Link of.
They are the Metrolink of San Diego.
Got it. Got it. They also run that little line between Escondido and Oceanside.
Yeah, the
Was
light
it
rail.
Light rail, yeah. Last item, and I'll shut up for the night. Once again, North Beach is looking like shantytown. Vagrants, drug dealers, flaunting of our laws, enough is enough. We need enforcement. I have no beef with our deputies. I certainly have no beef with Captain Benfield, who's the consummate professional, but I do have issues with the directions they receive from Santa Ana. It's time for our county supervisor and our sheriff to take action. Regarding Sheriff Barnes, I give him A++++ when it comes to protecting our city from rabble rousers who come here and yell such slogans as "burn this MFer down." I give him A when it A+ when it comes to protecting our constitutional rights. No one is a better steward than Don Barnes. However, when it comes to the vagrant issue and nuisance crime in our city, we need to talk. We need to have a discussion. We need to understand. Our taxpayers need to understand, why are we plagued by vagrants? And can you imagine the frustration? Can you imagine the frustration a new business has when it opens with a manure menagerie of vagrancy across the street? Open drug use, open drug dealing, and nothing is done. However, if they place 2 feather signs on their property, they get a visit from code enforcement. I don't agree with feather signs. I don't think they should be out there, but can you imagine the frustration the business owner has in dealing with the vagrant issue at North Beach, and they gets a visit from code compliance? I get it. Our code compliance people are wonderful. They're doing a great job. But I have a motion. I would like to direct the city manager to put together a meeting. And I'm not looking for, I'm not looking for number 2s or number 3s. I'm looking for principles, and I would like to have a meeting with Sheriff Barnes. I'd like to have a meeting with, I'd like to put everyone in one room: Sheriff Barnes, County Council, Supervisor Bartlett. And recently DA Spitzer sent out a mailer saying, let's not become LA. I agree with what he's saying, but maybe he needs to be part of that. Again, I'm looking for principles. I'm not looking for staff. I want to hear from the county council on their understanding of Martin versus Boise, because I think they have an extreme view of Martin versus Boise, which then precludes the sheriff's office from doing what it needs to do. I want to hear from Supervisor Bartlett on what county resources are being applied in the north and central spas compared to what is occurring in the south. Can we have that? Can I have support to direct the city manager to put together such a meeting?
talking about a public meeting or?
No, not yet.
I'll support that.
Yeah, thank you.
Is this to
Like I said,
agendize?
this is not, certainly nothing aimed at Captain Benfield. Captain Benfield's a great leader, a consummate professional.
It's a policy issue that is.
But it's a
broad and
policy
deep,
issue.
and it's got to be addressed.
It's got to be addressed.
Mayor, if I may, in point of order as it related to Madam Clerk, if I can get one more council member to give direction, then I will schedule those meetings rather than having two to bring it back for discussion.
Get your help there? Can I get your help there? Thank you.
Yes,
you.
absolutely.
So that's all I have. I'm sorry, I took up 15 minutes there.
Can I move to adjourn?
You can.
Okay. I move that we adjourn to an adjourned regular meeting to be held on May 25th, 2022 at 3 p.m. for the purpose of conducting a public hearing to consider the proposed 2022-2023 budget. Part 1 of the adjourned regular business meeting will commence at 5 p.m. and closed session will begin at 6 p.m. Part 2 of the adjourned regular business meeting will commence at 7 p.m. Meeting will take place here at the Community Center Auditorium located at 100 North Calle Seville, San Clemente.
I'm sorry.
Note, the regular scheduled meeting of May 17th has been canceled. So that will be our next meeting.
If I may, I think we were going to adjourn in memory of Mr. Hayden.
That's right.
Sorry.
Oh,
Give me 1 second, please. Have it right here. Thank you, City Manager. I'd like to adjourn tonight's meeting in memory of Bob Hayden. Bob passed away April 8th, 2022 at the age of 104. Bob moved to San Clemente in 1951 and has a long history of service to San Clemente ever since. Bob was named the 2016 City Wall of Recognition honoree in San Clemente. Bob has held every office in the San Clemente Rotary Club, served on the City Planning Commission, served on the Chamber of Commerce Board, and has been a member of the San Clemente Don since 1982. Bob has also served the city's Blue Ribbon Committee in 1992 during a time in which the city suffered financial hardships. The committee developed a cost savings plan to save the city millions of dollars, the benefits of which still continue today. Bob was also recognized by the Orange County Boy Scouts of America as Orange County's oldest Eagle Scout. Bob has volunteered his time and generously donated to many philanthropies. Bob will be missed by all who knew him. Rest in peace, Bob.
Okay, so the motion was by Mayor Pro Tem Duncan.
Mhm.
And seconded by
Second.
you, Mayor.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferguson,
Aye.
Councilmember Nopar,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Duncan.
Aye.
And Mayor James.
Aye.